the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Just gone 4 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. Yeah, we're back with Drive. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in. Hope you had a great weekend. My God, all you do is you go up to Edinburgh for 2 days, then you go and spend some time with your family, and you come back and the world's gone mad. I'm pretty sure from Thursday and Friday you guys have been talking non-stop about the reform fallout. I don't need to tell you what's happened. It seems that they are in crisis. Rupert Lowe saying that he's been silenced because of his outspoken views on migration. Other people saying, well, hold on a minute, you criticised Farage and the next day you're censured. They've been reporting him to the police, etc., etc. I'd just try a different angle here, because nobody will know what the absolute truth is. Isabel Oakeshott will be on later. She's promised to talk about it briefly. But I will say this to you. Just think about British politics as it is. There was a party that spent 14 years in power, the Conservative Party, the oldest established party in the United Kingdom, who so blatantly lost the ear of the British public that Labour won this massive majority, the most incompetent government we've had for the last 10 months. But I would have thought that any leader worth their bleeding salt, Kemi Badenoch, I hope you're listening, would have gathered her 121 MPs on Saturday morning and gone, now is our time. The only reason, most people would say that reform grew was because the Tories moved away from traditional Tory values. You'd want Badenoch, wouldn't you? And they're going, right, now is our chance. It's been hull below the water, this ship, but it is our chance. Not a word from the Tories. Not a bleeding word from Badenoch. Today she criticised the BBC. That's a good thing. But would you not be thinking, I am getting right in amongst reform? I'd love to know what you make of that, because I've heard nothing from the Tory party. We will, as a station, look at both sides of the argument. I know Ian was saying, do we believe that the Reform membership will support Rupert Lowe? Will they support Nigel Farage? I will say one thing, there would be no Reform Party without Nigel Farage. Let me tell you that. But we've heard on this station, we've heard it from Ben Habib about the democratisation of reform. Presumably Rupert feels the same. Is there one man with too much power? We'd love to know what you think. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. And like I said, Isabel Oakeshott here later live from Israel. We'll talk about what's happening in Gaza and Israel, but also her views on reform. Talking about the news in general, migration. I mean, this extraordinary story, loads of extraordinary stories, but an alleged Palestinian gunman who crossed the channel illegally in a small boat has been arrested, which is great news, isn't it? Because it seems that anybody can get here nowadays, and it seems that, foreign criminals are committing sex crimes, couples are being fined after migrants are found in their motorhomes, and still, all I hear from the bedwetters, all I hear is this, right? It's no good, you don't understand how bad it is. I'm sure it isn't great, but I do have to say, and it's gathered me quite a bit of criticism. I wish the people who jump up and down and say, you don't understand the situation in Palestine, would look me full square in the face and ask me whether I understand how bad anti-Semitism in this country. I think both sides have answers to give. I think there are problems on both fronts, but certainly our migration problem is a problem that is... I mean, how does a man, a key member of a militant group who's been called for the slaughter of all Jews and has been posted with AK-47s. How the hell does he get in this country? How the hell does that happen? 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. You might have heard me touch upon the BBC. The Beeb have not had a good time since Savile. It just gets worse and worse. The latest, of course, was Hugh Edwards, the voice of the BBC, our state broadcaster. Nice and balanced. Not. Hugh Edwards earned 475 grand a year. I don't have a problem with that, but in the midst of him earning this money, the BBC were fully aware that he was about to be exposed on serious child-related sexual offences. He was found guilty, was given a suspended sentence. Not only is he refusing to even talk about giving back the salary that we paid him, the British taxpayer, whilst he was awaiting trial, he gets to keep his pension. Today we find out the BBC has spent more than £1.3 million on this scandal. 340 grand on legal advice and just under £1 million spent on a review of the BBC's non-editorial complaints policies and processes. Imagine having £1 million to work out why you're crap at your job. Unbelievable. Now, 0344 499 1000. Loads to happen on the show. Love to hear from you. Straight away, who's this? Jez, Nigel Farage is the problem. Every time someone has come along with a decent view, he gets rid of them. Ben Habib, Suzanne Evans, Kilroy Silk. The list continues. This is about one man's ego. I will repeat to you, and I have an open mind on this. Is Nigel Farage the problem, or is Nigel Farage the very reason that reform exists in the first place? 0344 499 1000. Now, as I said, you would expect, would you not, the Tories to be vocal, to be seeing this as an opportunity to score a few points. But no, we're too busy having think tanks about what we need to be talking about. That's what we hear from the Tory party, a man who would know far more than me, a legend, a man who is always... He's my fluffer. James Price, former government special advisor. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I've been introduced in much worse ways. Thank you very much.
Fluff is a compliment, dear boy. So, of course, as is always the case, I happened to be in Edinburgh when this all sort of took off. And I find myself in a slightly, I think, probably the same position as many of us. I think that reform was based entirely and grew out of complete frustration about the fact that your party had moved away from what I call traditional Tory values. We've talked about it: a strong military, strong police, dealing with crime on the streets, you know, dealing with immigration, lowering taxes. But it seems that we had last week a pretty seismic problem. And I suspect, judging by the peace and quiet coming from the reform camp, that they are struggling to know which way to deal with this. Because, of course, Rupert Lowe did his interview in the Mail, slightly critical of Farage to a degree. Less than 24 hours later, he's suspended by the party, the whip's removed, he's reported to the police, he's been called a bully, a sexist bully, a man who speaks out of turn, and people inside the party have told us, you know, this has been going on for a long, long time. Now, that might well be the case. But the timing looks terrible, and I think that last text is quite relevant. I go every morning in my little life, I get out of my little car and I buy a coffee at this little coffee shop down in Dorset, and the man that serves me his coffee is a massive talk fan and a massive reform fan. And I always believe that you should go with the man and the woman on the street. He said to me this morning, "It's not good, this. What the hell's Farage up to? Rupert Lowe spoke our language. You can't just treat people like that. Is he a narcissist?" Now, I'm not saying that, not just a friend, right? But this is a massive problem for reform, isn't it, JP?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. They've been riding high in the polls. I think they're ahead of every other party in an average of polls at the moment. All they had to do in some ways was to, keep things together, slowly roll out some very sensible, common sense policies, because although they don't have the kind of deep philosophical underpinnings that the old parties have, they also don't have the baggage of the old parties. So they really could have gone with the grain of what would have been popular, or populist. Some might even go so far as to say it was all starting to look really rosy for them. And then this total own goal, this self-inflicted error. I mean, for what it's worth, cards on the table, I am 100% on the side of Rupert Lowe. I think that he has been the most impressive parliamentarian of this past intake. I think he's probably the most impressive parliamentarian of the last couple of intakes. Both his CV before, he was the chairman of Southampton Football Club.
He was, yep.
Business, he's done all sorts of successful things, independently wealthy, and has decided, instead of enjoying a well-earned retirement on the golf course, he's decided to go into public service. And since entering into Parliament, he has done something like 46% of all of Reform's work in terms of asking questions of departments, asking questions of ministers in the chamber, freedom of information style written questions that the MPs are able to do. He's been up and down everywhere on Twitter. He's been praised by the likes of Elon Musk, and he's held the government to account in all kinds of ways, exposing some of the early horrors of this government. That's exactly what you want in a parliamentarian. And because, as you say, he gave this interview, he wasn't even that critical of Farage, really. He described him at one point in the interview as a messianic figure, which is, reasonably high praise, one would have thought. Because it wasn't total slavishness, and because perhaps there are some rumours that Farage is sadly envious of his rising star, they decided to put out this amateurish, looks to me, hit job on him. Look, you've got to investigate claims of bullying in this day and age. That's very important. But the fact that these criticisms were leveled at Lowe, but it turns out actually they weren't about him, but some people in his staff. The fact that these things happened several months ago, and the complaint to the police was only just issued. The fact that the complaint was issued to the police at all, when it doesn't seem like it's exactly criminal activity going on, and the other complaint being that it was some raised voices and some hurty words to this chap who's come out of nowhere, Zia Yusuf, as the chairman. If you're the common sense anti-HR, anti-woke tosh party, and you go, oh no, someone's raised their voice and done some hurty words at me, it's not exactly very man on the street common sense, is it?
It's really interesting for me. The timing looks crap. You're absolutely right about Rupert Lowe, but let me read you from Rachel, because this is, and I thought Ian's question was great. Rachel says, afternoon, I'm going to keep it really simple for your viewers and your listeners. No Nigel Farage, no reform. Let that sink in, peeps. And that is also very important. But alongside that, it's the old adage of having a small business that then becomes a successfully medium-sized business and then a large business. If it's built around one person, it's letting go, it's devolving those powers and that responsibility. I believe it probably started when Musk said they need a new leader, and Rupert Lowe is very impressive. And listen, I know them, right? But to me, the problem they've got, and I will be as honest to Tice's face and Farage's face as I am being on air, they patently aren't going to talk about it for a few days. That's utterly their choice. But they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Because if they don't, people are rightly going to say, hold on a minute, what are you hiding here? Can you not answer this, right? If you troll out a comment saying this is being gone on, I don't disbelieve that. But if you come on, at least you're going to be there front and centre. Now, they've obviously decided to say very little, which I'm not sure is particularly good. The problem they've got with Rupert Lowe, and you are absolutely spot on, very impressive businessman and successful man. He might be, let's be perfectly honest, JP, let's look at the other side. This might be absolutely true, and he might be a pain in the arse who's caused nothing but problems and has been undermining the whole thesis. I don't know. But to hear that he tried to physically attack the chairman and all this stuff from nowhere, I just went, well, that's 17 hours after the article. That was me being really honest, which is why I want to hear from Reform. We've opened the door to that. But more interesting than that, we must hear from what people think. What do you think, people? Does this put you off Reform? Does it make you steadfastly stand with Farage? Are you on Rupert Lowe's side? Or does it... And the other thing, JP, which I really would love to hear from a former government special advisor, where the bloody hell... Was I right or wrong? If I was Kemi Badenoch Saturday morning, I'd have had them all in a room going, right, listen, this is a three-line whip. This is about the best opportunity we've had in about a year and a bit, OK? We are still on our backsides. The British public don't believe a word we say. We haven't got their ear. This party has risen from the ashes of our mistakes. Now's a chance at nothing. Absolutely nothing. I would have thought good politics would say you've got to put the boot in, right?
Yeah, perhaps, although, Sun Tzu in The Art of War famously said never interrupt an enemy whilst he's busy making a mistake. So I wonder if perhaps just allowing them to kind of duke it out for a while is a sensible...
Or is it symptomatic of the Tory party under Badenoch, who spends too much time strategising and not a lot saying anything?
That, what's the old phrase? You may well think that I wouldn't possibly comment. I have seen the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, has been incredibly warm towards Rupert Lowe, making kind of gentle overtures. And for what it's worth, the big problem that we're facing over the next few years is the fact that the Conservatives still have a level of support. I think they topped one poll last week briefly. You've got Reform with this surging level of support. You've got Labour, who will always have, inexplicably to me, some diehards, given every horror they've done in the last few months, let alone the last few decades to this country. But if you don't see any kind of breakthrough, that's the only way that the Socialists and Keir Starmer are going to stay in. This is the question that we've talked about a bit. Is there going to be a Reform Tory partnership? And some people right now will be screaming, no, Price, you're an idiot. That will never happen. But what a statement of intent from Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives if they were to make a big, generous, open offer to somebody like Rupert Lowe, who's a serious person.
And it's happened on the other foot for months. This is exactly what I meant. Love to know what you think of that, peeps. 0344 499 1000. I thought I'd get through a chat with James without having to do Donald Trump. Right, this is from Downing Street. Justin, the Prime Minister, really, spoke to President Trump ahead of the US-Ukraine dialogue in Saudi Arabia. The PM has said that UK officials have been speaking to Ukraine. He said they hope it will be a positive outcome. They spoke about an economic deal, not that there's any proof of that, blah, 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 blah. I was reading many, many different articles over the weekend about Trump's first 50 days and also Keir Starmer. I bet Keir Starmer wishes that he didn't have to be in Britain at all. He could just play I'm reasonably competent on the international stage-ish and not go home very often. What do you make of the first 50 days? Is Trump... I saw a programme at the weekend that said his approval rating continues to grow and all the people that voted for him are saying he's doing exactly what we thought. We love him for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been incredibly pleased to see a lot of what the Trump administration was doing up until this Zelensky ambush and the Ukraine farrago. I think that there are obviously very different views on Ukraine in Europe versus America. It feels a lot further away. It is a lot further away in the United States than it is here in Europe. And I think that it's become a very partisan issue because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris supported Ukraine. Therefore, there has to be something a bit wrong with them. And I think there have been a small number of people who have been duped or maybe paid by the Kremlin in order to kind of toe that ridiculous line that Russia is actually this sort of great, wonderful nation and all the rest of it, rather than a kind of gangsterish gas station with a country attached to it. Now that's very depressing. I guess if you're trying to see it from the Trump administration's point of view, whether or not it's Russia or Ukraine who controls a few sort of provinces east of the Dnipro River, in the grand scheme of all of the domestic and foreign challenges that the United States faces and is going to face over the next 10, 20 years, it's not the most important thing. And they're trying to kind of speed run a conclusion to it. It's going to be very difficult without huge amounts of extra support and the risk of nuclear escalation coming along at some point to end the war with all of Ukraine's sovereignty and territory reclaimed. Frankly, a lot of people have been moved out of that area. They've either fled west into Ukraine, into Poland and beyond, or they've been marched out and horrible scenes where children have been taken and sent into deepest Russia. So the kind of bits of land that are being sort of fought over, they're not even necessarily the kind of places you'd want. They're almost gangrenous, and it might be better in some ways to cut them off if the Europeans and hopefully Americans too will provide a better security guarantee for what's left of Ukraine, which is still most of the country, and then to power that border up, to enforce it with all of the power and might that we can muster with reindustrialization, to never allow it to happen again. Because Trump is broadly right that it was weakness that emboldened Putin to do this, just as it was weakness that allowed Iran and Hamas to commit their evils around the world too.
Be interesting to see. More on Trump coming up. 0344 499 1000. JP, I don't care what Ryan says. We've got 5 more minutes. I want to talk BBC and migrants, but I want you to join me on a call. Let's go to Epsom. Daniel, you're on Talk Drive with me and James Price. What you got?
Jezza, how are you, mate?
Not too bad for a balding, nearly 6-year-old has-been. What are you saying?
Oh, we love you, mate. Do you know what? I just think that I would like to sit Rupert Lowe, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, Ben Habib and Zia Youssef all in a meeting room and say, listen, what can we do to get everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction? It's not about us. It's about the British public. They need us. The British public are sick to death of the Con Lab Uniparty. It's let us down for 30, 40 years. Mass immigration is destroying the fabric of our country, ruining the place. The public need us. What can we all do together to all be rowing in the boat in the same direction?
Interesting analogy when we're talking about immigrants rowing the boat. Let's take that point, Dan, because I haven't got a lot of time and I don't mean to be disrespectful. JP, he's right. This organisation reform grew from massive frustration over what the Conservatives ended up representing and doing. But it isn't just Rupert Lowe. There was the Ben Habib thing. There have been other examples. Is there a problem, do you think, with the power base of this party? I don't know, because it would strike me, where Dan's absolutely spot on, is this could be a massively missed opportunity if they don't get their heads banged together and get this right.
Yeah, look, it's not my party, but like you, I know Nigel a tiny bit, and I think he's a kind of a patriot who loves his country and wants the best for it. It does seem like man management may not be a bench strength of his, just like policy may not be the biggest strength of his. And in this idea that ego gets in the way would hardly be a new story in politics. But if that is the case and enough of these people are kicking around who are disgruntled, well, why wouldn't they go and join a reformed Conservative Party and finally get them to stick their money where their mouth is on immigration? Robert Jenrick has done a great job of, I think, starting to rebuild Tory credibility on this issue that was destroyed by the Boris wave.
Why didn't they vote for him to be leader then? Because they'd be doing a lot better, would they not, if they'd have picked him instead of Kemi Badenoch, in my humble opinion?
I wouldn't dare give your audience a politician's answer, but I mean, I did vote for Rob, and I think he's very excellent. And I think that having people like him and Rupert Lowe all in the same party would be the surest way of getting mass immigration under control. And that would be great for the country in all kinds of cultural, economic, social, military ways.
Dan, response?
Well, the thing is, Jez, I imagine what a masterstroke it would be in the press in a week's time if they all lined up together, including Ben Habib and Rupert, and we're back together, and we are the force in British politics, and we're all back, and we all believe in the same thing, and we want you guys to get behind us. I think it's an opportunity not to be missed.
I agree, but
everyone's back aboard, Jez, and everyone is towing the same line. I think they need to think about the people and put us first. We're desperate out here. We can't have another 4 years of this atrocious Labour government. We can't vote the Tories back in because they can't be trusted. Put the people first. Get your heads together. And let's go again. Let's fight. Come on.
All right, Dan, listen, I've got to go. 422 0344 499 1000. Before I let you go, JP, very quick comments on the other two main news stories of the day. Our migration service is at best crap. It's potentially even worse than Meghan Markle's new programme. An alleged Palestinian gunman who crossed the channel illegally, of course, on a small boat, has been arrested. Abu Wadi is understood to be a former key member of a militant group who called for the slaughter of all Jews and posed with an AK-47 rifle. But he got into this country. Really? Where does that leave us all? Seriously, ludicrous.
It is absolutely ludicrous. He is one of tens of thousands of fighting-age males from completely alien cultures who've made it into this country and are now not going to be deported because we are run at the moment by a clerisy of lawyers who care more about international law than they do about the rights of the British people. And the anger of your previous guest calling in should be focused very much on those kinds of issues. I agree with him that putting the people first means putting migrants like that, bogus asylum seekers and frankly terrorists last, deporting them. But let's see, will he actually ever even be deported? I'd hand him over to Israel tomorrow, but he'll probably end up being given a council house and allowed to stay here.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? We find out that foreign criminals are committing 25% of sexual crimes. What about that couple? Have you heard about this today? Adrian and Joanne Fenton. They had their motorhome. I don't know, I've gone all northern. They brought their motorhome back on ferry from Nice Time in France. There was a migrant underneath. Hold on a second, this is what's wrong with this world. They got fined 1,500 quid because I'm not saying we'd all look under the car. He got put in a hotel. They got fined £1,500. The whole bloody system's completely inane, James.
What are you talking about? Keir Starmer needs that £1,500 to be able to pay for that chap's Wi-Fi and food and new mobile phone.
So they, in fact, gave him a lift without knowing it, and they've paid for him to live free. Final one for you. I'm really... This is one of those stories that will not go away from me, Hugh Edwards. Not only is he a paedophile who should be in jail, he shouldn't be free. Not only was working for an organisation that I think that is defunct. We learned today that the BBC has spent 1.3 million quid getting legal advice on how to deal with him and £1 million on looking at procedures and processes that didn't work. But still he's got his pension and still we paid for him knowing he was going to be, well, the BBC knew that he was going to face his judges and nothing gets done again.
Yeah, and that's to go along with, I think, the diversity officers who are paid more at the BBC than other senior officers as well. I think that's another story there, which is weird because, you know, we were told if you're a white male at the BBC, you don't get paid very well anymore unless it turns out you're notorious paedophile Hugh Edwards. It's enough to make a cat laugh, and who knows what else is going on there.
I love your analogy, and we love having you on. Thank you so much indeed, as ever, for Wednesday. James Price, former government special advisor, 425. We are live across the UK. This is Talk Drive. Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense, and it's down to you, my friends. Jodie is back, slightly hungover from a weekend of debauchery and booze. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but ring her and just go, hello, in a loud voice, because it'll make her head hurt. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. You can leave a voice note on that same number via WhatsApp. You can get us via text as well, 87222. Start your message with the word talk.
and he was able to stay up there for extraordinarily 16 hours. Massive, big sort of security. Everybody and his mum turned up after the fact. He climbed up there. A, how was he able to climb up there? B, why wasn't he shot immediately and brought down? And C, at what point are we going to think that we might actually want to provide proper protection to the building which is the home of our democracy?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The home of Talk, of course, and the home of Mike Graham. Back tomorrow morning. Sounded fantastic this morning. Morning Glory with MG, Monday to Friday, only here on Talk. Thank you for your text, by the way, to drive. Graham in Bushy. I'm surprised that the BBC haven't offered the Hamas-supporting asylum seeker Abu Wadi a job in their documentary verifying department. That's a very good point. This man, of course, managed to get into our country illegally, despite the fact that he's called for all Jews to be slaughtered and has been filmed with an AK-47. That's what's wrong with this bloody country, isn't it? Hello to Amanda. Hey, JK, I've been listening to Talk since 7 and I'm disgusted to hear so many Reform UK voters leaving the party at this time. It's time to pull together for the sake of our crumbling party, Susanna. So in the space of 4 days, you think your party is crumbling. Good afternoon to Christina. Hi, Jess. Ben Habib is so bitter he is not deputy leader of Reform, constantly banging on about Nigel. I just wish they would all grow up and talk behind closed doors. Without Nigel, Reform would only be a protest party. This is a hand-given gift to the Tories. Yes, it might be a hand-given gift, but the Tories haven't even opened it because I don't know what they're doing. Anna in Surrey, interesting. People like myself, Jess, normal law-abiding citizens, are furious with the state of the United Kingdom and they're acting out of character and desire immediate change. Rupert taps into that volatility and I think that Nigel senses that and wants to calm things down. Play the long game and get into Westminster with a calm head. I think this will blow over with Rupert and maybe the status quo should thank Nigel for keeping a lid on it to this point. Interesting. Hello to Ben in Plymouth. Rupert Lowe is brilliant. I would much prefer him as leader than Nigel Farage. Matthew from Cheltenham. Just want to say what an amazing job Harry Cole did last week. Can't you be off all week? It's nice, isn't it? Didn't he? He said, just glad to have you back. Why don't the two of you... Yeah, right. Matthew in chat, very good. Afternoon, Jess. I think Nigel Farage couldn't have heard the old adage, don't climb up there too close to God. He might just shake the tree. That's very interesting. And this one, I love people when they set me a challenge. Nikki in Kent. Those that support Reform, and I'm definitely not one of them, Jez, do they know that the Reform MP Rupert Lowe has argued that the public should pay for their own health care and advocated for the NHS to be dismantled? Is that true? I don't know. This was to you, Jeremy Carl. Are you brave enough to read this out and discuss it? You always have so much to say in the nicest possible way. I'll open it up. Has Rupert Lowe, I can't answer that, so the producers are going to, has he called for the public to pay for all of their own health care and the dismantling of the NHS? We'll get back to you. Finally, Tony in Sussex. In my opinion, if Reform doesn't look like it's going to win the most seats in Parliament at the next election, whatever that is, Nigel Farage will walk. He's only interested in the top job now, mate. That's it. Love your show and your guests. 0344 499 1000. Let's get an opinion from, well, the ultimate political nerd, the chief political correspondent for The Sun, good friend of mine, Jack Elson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. What a fantastic introduction.
Can I just ask, Harry, great job on Thursday. We're going to Cheltenham all week. Cole's already on the source. Did you get a day out at Cheltenham or not?
I think to be confirmed at the moment. I'm actually off on Friday, so my diary's clear. In case
if you want to join us on Friday, the invite's open, and I think it would be a disgrace if he didn't. I mean, I rang him up, I helped him with the show. He should give you a day off. We haven't got an awful lot of time, so we're going to flit around. But this whole Reform thing, which blew up, very interesting for me. Somebody's obviously decided that they're not going to talk to the press, which creates even more intrigue and interest. Why are they not speaking? They're saying, the Reform Party, that this has been going on for a while and that Rupert Lowe is difficult. Other people are saying the timing of the accusations are so outrageously bad and against the time he criticised Farage. What I do know, sitting here this afternoon, is that this is a massive own goal and an open goal for the Tory party. I don't know if you heard me make the point. I'd have had them all in a room Saturday morning if I was Kemi, and I'd have been saying, here's our chance. Not a bleeding word from them, Jack, with the greatest of respect. Nothing.
Well, sometimes a period of silence on behalf of the parties which aren't in the proverbial is sometimes actually quite good. You know, you give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves.
Okay.
So maybe that's why they're staying out of it. I had a Reform spokesman earlier on saying that Rupert Lowe was informed of this investigation against him 7 days before that pretty explosive Mail article in which he came for Nigel Farage and questioned his leadership. I imagine it's probably a bit of both here. It seems that tensions have been bubbling up between the two for quite some time. Nobody really knows what happened with this investigation. Obviously, Rupert Lowe is denying the whole thing, although it does seem that Nigel Farage often isn't happy with people that overshadow him, criticise him. I mean, in some regards, Nigel Farage probably has the thickest skin in Westminster, all the names he's been called over the years, and to keep doing this now after decades. But at other times, people around him say that actually he is quite sensitive to people questioning his style of leadership. And you know, his political career is littered with the bodies of people who have almost tried to come at him in various ways and have failed, Ben Habib probably being one of them. So obviously it's not good for them. And I think that it definitely has more ramifications in a smaller parliamentary party. There was 5 of them, there's only 4 of them, so they shaved off a fifth of that already. But like you said, it's just a gift to the Conservatives and to Labour, really, because you know, even if they go back to the Conservatives the next election, Labour definitely fear reform as their main challenger. And so to have them all fighting amongst themselves, I think is really damaging for them. I think it is interesting because on Twitter, Rupert Lowe definitely makes a lot of noise. He has a big following. Out in the country, I'm not so sure. Nigel Farage is reform to most people. You know, his name recognition and facial recognition will be off the charts. He's probably the most recognised politician, I'd say, in the United Kingdom, probably even more than Keir Starmer, you'd actually bet. Rupert Lowe has a big traction in the grassroots of reform, and this will probably disillusion a lot of them. But whether or not it will actually take a dent to reform's poll ratings, I wouldn't be so sure.
Brilliant. That's why you are the chief political under the sun. I thought you did that brilliantly. 3 other things very quickly. So we live in a world where if you've actually called... you're a sort of terrorist militant. If you've actually called for the death of all Jews and been filmed with an AK-47, you can get into this country illegally, backed up by a couple, poor little couple, Adrian and Joanne Fenton, got in motorhome, come back across from wherever they were on boat. Migrant underneath. Not that you'd have a look, but there was a migrant underneath. When their motorhome got back to this great country of ours, in brackets once was great, now closed brackets, there was a migrant underneath their truck. And do you know what happened? You know what happened? Okay. They got fined 1,500 quid and the migrant got a 4-star hotel for the night, a mobile phone and probably a load of cash. We're going mad, Jack Hilson. What the hell is wrong with this country? That's an awful example again.
I've read this story earlier and genuinely couldn't believe it. And I think that most people in this country that read that story will be absolutely slack-jawed and gobsmacked when they see that, because it's almost as if the Home Office is now blaming other people for not having the wherewithal or the vigilance to check their own cars for illegal migrants. It shouldn't be the job. It shouldn't be the norm that you'd expect an illegal migrant to clamber up into your roof rack when you come back from your nice jolly from France. Yeah, that shouldn't happen. That just shouldn't happen. The onus shouldn't be on them. The onus should be on, one, the French police to do diligent checks for the £500 million, by the way, which we're paying them for it, and also on this UK government to massively reduce the pull factors so that people don't want to come to this country if they know that if they come and they're caught here, they'll be deported within a very short space of time and never allowed back. So,
and I think
it's
that
definitely
phrase,
not on this poor couple.
Absolutely, mate. And I'm so with you. I've always believed that you and Harry are spot on. We all think the same on this. If this country was less accommodating, less attractive, and laid out the red carpet a bit less to people who don't deserve it and more to the people who do, I don't believe there will be the immigration there is. I think the absolute deterrent is not to wipe their backsides when they get here. The other thing I know you've got a great opinion of, some judges today, top judges, have hit back at claims that are imposing a 2-tier justice system that favours ethnic and gender minorities. The Sentencing Council have rebuked Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood's demand to abandon their controversial new guidance. Last week it issued rules telling judges to take into account a convict's ethnicity, faith or gender when deciding whether to... See, this is another thing. So if you're a different gender to me, or you're confused about your gender, or you're a different ethnicity, or, you're having a hard time with anxiety, you can get away with breaking the frigging law. Is that what we're saying now? You can get away with breaking the law. That's the truth, right?
Well, it definitely opens the possibility they could get softer sentences because
Why?
pre-sentencing reports, which essentially is what this is, gives judges pause for thought before they decide whether to put someone in jail or not. And so one of the reasons they could prepare these sentencing reports is if someone's from an ethnic minority, a faith minority, if they are transgender. This was a massive row last week. And to the Justice Secretary's credit, Shabana Mahmood, she wrote to the Sentencing Council and said, while you are independent, I strongly urge you to drop these changes because they will create the impression of two-tier justice. And she said to her credit as well, as an ethnic minority herself, she is completely opposed to this, and justice should be blind. These unelected judges now have written back to her, and it is not just a rebuke, but it is a strong rebuke. They are accusing her of treading on the impartiality of the judiciary and saying they're not going to be backing down.
Hold on a second, treading on the impartiality of the judiciary. How is it impartial to say, if you're an ethnic minority or a gender minority, that you can commit a crime and get away with it simply because of your sex or the colour of your skin? That's rubbish. That is not impartiality. That is bias, isn't it?
Yeah, and the point they're making in their letter back to her is that there's lots of disparities within jailing of ethnic minorities and white people. But a lot of people would think it's not about not drilling down into the issues that more black men go to prison than more white men. But if you have committed a crime, then you should be completely equal under the law, and there should be no biased one way or the other. It's now going to be a massive row because the Justice Secretary has threatened to pass laws to essentially overrule the Sentencing Council if they didn't drop this guidance. And it looks like now the ball's in her court. She'll either have to back down or follow through with these threats. It's going to be a lively old row in the next few weeks. I think we are now await what move Shabana moves.
See, this is why we need Donald Trump-esque in this country, because he'd simply say, they're fired. The Sentencing Council. I mean, that is ludicrous. Jack, I know you're a busy man. I promised you will be at Cheltenham this week. Leave it to me. Thank you so much indeed. Jack Elson from The Sun, 0344 499 1000. What do you want to talk about? Reform? The fact that if you find a migrant under your car that you didn't know about when you get back in motorhome from France, you get fined 1,500 quid. They get to move to a hotel. The world's gone mad. Or the justices who were saying, the judges who were saying, no, it's fair. If you're a different ethnicity or a different race or a different gender, you should be treated differently in court. I'm going to have to lie down in a dark room. 20 to 5 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Drive, 18 minutes to 5. Hello to Davy Reese. He says Musk is the cause of this, Jez. Lowe shouldn't have listened to him. He's an idiot. Ali is in Sidcup. We will vote for reform without Farage. Fact. Very much interesting. There you go. Chris Hilton. I could see Rupert Lowe join the Tories before the next election. Many people saying that. Roy's in Gloucester. Hello. Why did I do that? JK, the problem with reform is it's a very small party with more talent and ego than all of the current government combined. When you have such talent and ambition, there is bound to be a clash of personalities. Rupert Lowe is a massive asset to reform and the reason a lot of people have sided with them in the first place. Amanda's in London. Well said, your last caller, Dan. Get your act together, Reform UK. Your country needs you. Natasha, good afternoon. Listen to Daniel on my way home. He speaks for us, the people. If Reform really do care about us and our country, Jez, they would unite. Rupert and Ben were two reasons I joined Reform. They need to get rid of their egos and thinking about themselves and think about us. Jez, I've always thought that Farage would be a brilliant opposition leader. I would not necessarily want him in charge of the country, but he is needed in politics. With Mr Lowe, I thought the country had a real chance of winning the next election. Interesting. And finally, for now, Andy in Darlington. Great show as ever. Regarding Farage and the Lowe situation, Jez, whilst I like Farage and still will probably vote for reform, I'm not going to decide just yet. There seems to be a recurring theme with any person that begins to take some of the spotlight off him. They get pushed away. Habib, Lowe in reform, other people in other parties too. Brexit and UKIP had similar circumstances. Then there was the total renouncing of Tommy and people like that. The common denominator in all of that is Farage. I'm surprised Lee Anderson hasn't been pushed out yet. That's from Andy Sherrington. What are your thoughts? 0344 499 1000. We're heading north to Teesside. Way, man. Diane, good afternoon. You're on Talk Drive. How are you?
Now then, Jezza, how are you doing?
Way, man. Whereabouts in Teesside, man?
That's my full-on Teesside accent, I'll have you know.
Where are you?
I'm in Stockton-on-Tees.
Now, you see, it's posh there. People get out the bath to have a wee in Stockton-on-Tees, don't they?
That's true. They don't do that in the bother, but anyway.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
We digress. What I wanted to raise, Jeremy, is that on Thursday I was as shocked as everybody to hear that there'd been this kick-off in reform, and I'm a big fan of both men, and I have a lot of time for Rupert Lowe because I do think he speaks. Sometimes he speaks my language. However, it was only today that I noticed a headline in the Daily Mail from the Tory boy Pierce article that actually said that this was a quote, obviously, from Rupert, that he would deport the migrants to an island off the Outer Hebrides and let the midges do the rest. I don't think that is something that Reform want to attract. It digresses from the voters that they're wanting to attract.
I'll tell you why I love your call. I also think that many programmes, not necessarily on this network, they set out and they know what they're going to say. I've just thought of something as you are speaking, which would be my view on this, which is, and somebody touched upon this earlier, I guess the nearer you get to a position of power, you can't be as outspoken, perhaps, as you would like to be. You have to understand there are machinations of government. It's all well and good for the country to go, it's great, it's great, it's great, it's great. That's a soundbite. Presumably Farage, maybe, I'm not defending him. I'm a fan of both men, but maybe Farage realises that there needs to be less, chest beating, and in certain circumstances, I don't know, certain things can't be said. Whatever the truth of the matter is, these two need to be very careful, because I believe, and I voted for reform, I think the concept is excellent. I'd hate to think that the concept gets destroyed because of ego. Diane in Teesside, thank you so much indeed. We'll head south to London. Ian, you're on Talk Drive. A very good afternoon to you, sir. How are you?
Well, Joseph, very well. I'd like to sort of bring your mind. I think, the couple that got fined for bringing in that illegal immigrant without their knowledge?
Please do stop there whilst I repeat the story of the decade, in my humble opinion, for people who have just tuned in to Drive Time. This country is so on its arse, ladies and gentlemen, that a couple who discovered that a migrant had clung to the back of their vehicle on all the way home from France. They got back in with camper van from France, bless them, Adrian and Joanne Fenton, where they were promptly told by authorities that a migrant was under their van. He was carted off to a 4-star hotel for a warm bubble bath and given a new mobile phone. They were fined 1,500 quid. The world's gone barking mad, Ian.
It's funny because I didn't realise the surname, mine. But anyway, let's move forward. Right, so basically, them and the rest of the country should send the bill to David Lammy. You might ask me why.
Why?
Because he's been sending the money to UNRWA and to the terrorist organisation in Syria, which pay for them to get all illegally across Europe to get back in here.
Mate, I honestly, I think one of the joys of working on this station has been that you can have an opinion about something without being accused. I find it extraordinary that we live now in a country where 2 innocent people on holiday get fined, how a man who's called for the slaughter of Jews, ultimate racism for all your tub thumpers out there, or your bedwetters, he can be seen with an AK-47, he can get in here, and yet if you say a few hurty words and you've paid tax all your life, you can be arrested. To me, the whole thing, the whole dial of normality has been turned upside down, and that's just another appalling story. David Lammy, what, the man that spent £500,000 on food and booze since he got the job as Foreign Secretary, do you know that?
Yeah, and also the guy that when he met the, Palestinians, sort of nothing, when he met the Israelis, took off the yellow ribbon to say to let go of the hostages. Unbelievable.
Got to go. Ian in London, thank you very much indeed. This is Talk Drive. Coming next, we've got a Tory view. Very interesting. Graham Stewart, Conservative for Beverley and Oldham. It's next on Talk Drive.
Those people who are actually fleecing the system are taking money away from the very people that you just talked about. You know, the disabled, people who are elderly, people who are, through no fault of their own, have ended up in the situations that they're in. And I really feel for them, because actually they're being done in by a system which people are gaming. I mean, on TikTok alone, there's these things called sickfluencers, where they show people how to get round the system and which words to use. It's pretty disgusting, to be honest with you, Julie.
And he was able to stay up there for extraordinarily 16 hours. Massive, big sort of security. Everybody and his mum turned up after the fact he climbed up there. A, how was he able to climb up there? B, why wasn't he shot immediately and brought down? And C, at what point are we going to think that we might actually want to provide proper protection to the building which is the home of our democracy?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8 minutes to 5. Welcome to Drive. This is JK till 70344 4991000. Text to 87222. Delighted my next guest on many levels, Graham Stewart, the Tory MP for Beverley and Holderness in Yorkshire. Graham, a very good afternoon to you, my friend.
Good afternoon to you, Jeremy.
I just wanted to ask you, as the local MP, on one of the breaking news stories that we have had throughout the last few years, a tanker carrying jet fuel for the US military involved in a horrendous collision with a cargo ship this morning in the North Sea. Huge leaking, terrible pictures. You're the local MP. You say you've spoken to the Transport Secretary and understood only one person was in hospital. Can you update us on any more, as it's, you know, the local area that you represent in Parliament, my friend?
Yeah, well, it's about 10 miles away from Withensea, which is a coastal town, a lovely seaside resort, which many of your viewers will have visited before. I was there all day Friday, and I'd be horrified at this terrible accident. We think it's an accident. It may be down to poor visibility. Who knows? You'd have thought this wouldn't happen with modern technology, but as it is, this tanker and the other ship, the Sulong, have crashed. They're both alight. There were 23 people on the Stena, and all of those have been brought to shore and accounted for, and 14 people, I understand, on the Sulong, of whom 13 of the 14 have been accounted for. And there's one person, this is the briefing I had a couple of hours ago, in hospital. But there's one of the things I have been asking for, Jeremy, because like you, I often get cross about the way we're governed, is to make sure that this is all brought together in a coordinated way. And there's going to be a meeting just in a few minutes, actually 6 minutes, 5 o'clock meeting of the various agencies. Good. So I was suggesting that they have a thing called a sort of gold, silver, bronze command they can set up when a disaster happens to make sure that everyone basically comes together and is coordinated properly. I know that the local authority is doing something there, but one hopes that this jet fuel, unlike crude, might burn off relatively quickly and therefore not cause an environmental disaster, because having made sure that the people are all right, I'm just yet again filled with pride for the way that local volunteers from the RNLI as well as the Coast Guard go out there and keep us safe.
Completely agree. Graham, I would love to have more time with you. I know you're a busy man. We're busy on the show. We've only got 5 minutes to the news. Can we talk about, thank you for that update, very important for our viewers and listeners. Can we talk about Reform UK? Can I be really straight with you? I know what you're going to say.
No, Jeremy.
I would have thought that your leader and your party, after being battered in the election and battered and not had a headline for ages, would have seen this as a massive opportunity from Friday to score some points and to actually stand up and be counted. But again, what's bad not doing? Working out a strategy. Surely you need to be more vocal. This is the party that's taken so many of your voters, not imploding, but in trouble. Put the boot in, man.
Well, I mean, I'm always happy to put the boot into political opponents. But there's an element, it just goes to prove that Kemi's got it right, because she's not overly spooked by reform. They go, oh, they're ahead in the opinion polls. What, 4 years from a general election? Who cares, frankly? What matters is that this Labour government is failing us and failing us badly. You were just talking about it now. I mean, their number one mission is economic growth, to restore us after the terrible Tory years. What have they done? They've taken the fastest growing economy in the G7. They've taken inflation that was on target at 2%, 4 million additional jobs. That was the legacy from the Tories, and they're wrecking it. So I don't really, frankly, Jeremy, controversial view. I hope I don't sound too complacent. I don't care about reform. I reckon that they're only interested in themselves. They're not interested in the national interest. They're a protest party. They haven't got policies on anything. The first thing they came out with was some net zero ones. They want to bury every cable, unaffordable. They want to tax renewables, absurd. This is the only policies I've seen them produce. I don't really care about reform.
But they got 4 million votes, Graham. Graham, with respect, they got 4 million votes and you lost 171 MPs. So are you not in danger by saying I don't care, that you're rather saying to the people that voted that you're irrelevant? The Tories need those 4 million voters back.
Well, no more, Jeremy, than when I've said that Liberal Democrats are irrelevant. That when people say to me, why isn't there none of the above on the ballot paper, Mr. Stewart? I would always say to them for years, there is. And they go, oh, Have they changed the rules? I missed that. I missed that in the newspapers. I go, yes, it's called, none of the above is called the Liberal Democrats. No one actually votes Liberal Democrat because of their policies. They do so because they're upset with the Tories and Labour, and they're kind of like a plague on all your houses. Well, there's a right-wing version of that, and it's called Reform. No one thinks the Reform is going to form a government any more than the Liberal Democrats. They are ultimately an irrelevance. That doesn't mean I dismiss the righteous anger of people who were told again and again by us that we would bring down immigration to certain numbers. We didn't have to make those promises, but we did, and we failed. So we're putting our hands up now. Kemi Badenoch is absolutely saying, let's look at this carefully because we made promises we didn't keep. We have a long way to go to rebuild the trust of people like you who voted Reform. You're just furious and want someone to listen on big issues, and we didn't listen well enough. We didn't deliver the way we should. Kemi is absolutely carefully working to rebuild our policy platform and make sure that when we get to the next election, not this weekend, Jeremy, with all respect to you, and you're a media guy, so quite right, why aren't we smashing the ball in the net today? I'm not that bothered about that. I'm interested in the long term that we have a credible...
Is Kemi Badenoch, I've only got a minute, Graham, is Kemi Badenoch the answer? I had somebody on yesterday or the day before who said she won't be there till Christmas.
Nah, nonsense. You always get backbiting people. I always remember when Keir Starmer lost the Hartlepool by-election 11 years into a Tory government. And he became Prime Minister with the biggest majority since 1830.
That was down to you lot. GS, I'm going to tell you something. You are welcome on any time. Thank you for the update as the local MP on that disaster. Not sure about the tie, but you must be on again. We appreciate it very much indeed. Graham Stewart, Tory MP, of course, for, it's not written down, up north, Beverley and Holderness. I'm so rude. We've got the news at 5, whatever you want to talk about, reform, migration, the BBC or Graham Stewart's tie, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. The news at 5 is next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Welcome to hour 2 of Talk. We're live across the UK. This is JK. Slightly sweaty, JK, to be fair. Some person thought it would be a good idea to have the studio heat on high. It's about 95 degrees. I feel like I'm in Benidorm. Not that I go to Benidorm, but there we go. 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number here on the home of free speech and common sense. Or you can text 87222 start your message with the word talk. What do you want to talk about? Reform? The fallout between Farage and Rupert Lowe? Whose side are you on? Is it the beginning of the end? Why are the Tories saying nothing? Graham Stewart, the Tory MP for Beverley and Holden, is saying reform's irrelevant. Who gives a damn? Then they'll be nowhere. Other people are saying that's exactly why the Tory party is on its backside, Graham Stewart. You're not listening to what's going on in the country. Perhaps you want to talk about the BBC. They found out today, or rather we found out, they spent £1.3 million of your money. Yes, that wonderful licence fee you're forced to pay, even if you think all their programmes are crap. They've spent 1.3 million quid of it looking into the Hugh Edwards scandal. £350,000 on legal help and £1 million on having a committee look at where it all went wrong. None of that, of course, spent on trying to get back his pension or the money that he was paid whilst waiting for child sex offences in court that the BBC knew about. But perhaps the highlight/lowlight of my day, ladies and gentlemen, was a poor couple called Adrian and Joanne Fenton. I don't know why I do that accent, but it makes me feel like I want to. They get on camper van from France on ferry. This is how bad our country is, right? They get back to the United Kingdom and some daft spark goes, I think you'll find there's an illegal migrant under your van. This illegal migrant's been holding on for dear life, right? He's got over the... What happens next just about sums up why I, at 60, feel I should go and live on a desert island on my own. They get fined 1,500 quid. They do. What have they been, trafficking a migrant? He gets to go and stay in a 4-star hotel with bubble bath and a mobile phone. That's what's wrong. 0344 499 1000. Oh, God. I can't vote. Peter Bromley. I can't vote Tory anymore. Reform need to get their shirt together. Pardon? Oh, their shirt. He's put shirt. I think he meant another word there. Quite interesting. To hear them wobbling is pathetic. Your callers are correct. This country needs them. Thank you, Peter Bromley. Graham Pack. Maybe Farage and Rupert Lowe should go and see a relationship counsellor. Yeah, that'd be good. Hello to Stephen, Haywards Heath. What absurd bravado from Graham Stewart. Typical Tory, patronising and out of touch. Interesting. Margaret, why have I done that? Jez, the Reform Party should get round the table and sort out their differences. We need them. They would put the country and its people first. I completely agree. 0344 499 1000. A man who we haven't had on for a while. A very good friend of mine. A man who moves in the higher echelons of society. Ex-Tory party chairman who was brave enough to say to Rishi Sunak, don't even think about firing me, I don't want to work with you. Sir Jake Berry, a very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, Jeremy. Great to see you.
Look at you in your check shirt. You're looking a bit relaxed. What's going on, man?
I'm just in the office, just doing a bit of work.
Good man. Jake, I started this because I was away, just literally on Thursday and Friday, and Harry did a great job, and then all of this kicked off with reform. Now, I think... did you just hear Graham Stewart?
Yeah, what an extraordinary tie he was wearing.
Yeah, I'm just slightly worried that sort of reform are irrelevant is exactly the reason why the Tories had their backsides kicked at the last election. I think there needs to be a greater appreciation that nearly 5 million people whose ears the Tory party had lost do not see their vote as a joke. I thought Graham probably... I understand to a degree what he's saying. Reform, this fallout. Is it, in your mind, Farage's ego? Is it pretty commonplace in political parties? Does this highlight bigger issues? But more importantly than that, as I said to Graham Stewart, why is Badenoch lining her troops up and firing pot shots in the direction of the party who have had all the attention and all the newspaper headlines and basically have created the narrative over the last 10 months?
Well, several questions there, Jeremy. Dealing with them in order. Look, I heard Graham. I think he's completely wrong to poo-poo reform. Certainly millions of people voted for them, and it's quite likely in the local elections that we see coming up in May that they're going to do exceptionally well. And I think the Conservative Party doesn't need to become reform or join with reform, but it needs to think about why people who previously were Conservative voters are no longer voting for us and voting reform. And I think it's, I've got a lot of time for Graham. He's a great man, but I think it's not the right thing to do to write them off as irrelevant. I don't think that's the reality of the situation. In relation to this spat between one of their MPs, Rupert Lowe, and another MP, but also leader...
Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage, sorry.
See, it's gone already into Jake Berry's mind. One argument and he's toast.
I think in a way it shows them growing up as a political party. They were previously a pressure group. They had nothing really to say except immigration. And when you become a major political party with MPs, as they got at the last election, suddenly these issues come down the track. Now, I think they've struggled a bit. I don't think they've dealt with it very well. They don't seem to have that sort of infrastructure in place that other big political parties seem to have to deal with people who are subject to these sorts of allegations. But I think they will shrug it off. I think they will move ahead. Many opinion polls have them in the lead or in second place. I do not think this is any political party, Conservative, Labour, laying a glove on them. This is a bit of a circular firing squad. I know all about those. I'm a Conservative. We're the real experts at forming those. But I think it could have been dealt with better, but in the long term, I don't think it makes much of a difference.
It's very interesting that you said that the Tories and Labour, Jake, had not laid a glove. Here's my point. The point that I'm making about Kemi Badenoch is a narrative, and I haven't heard anything from the Tories. I mean, she talked about BBC bias today. We'll talk about that. But maybe she's a methodical and different person. I've had Tories on saying she'll be gone by Christmas. I've had Tories on saying, no, she's the future, we're planning. But thinking about it is one thing. I get that. I get this. Let's keep thinking about the mistakes we made. But in the end, the British public, a year into this Labour Party, this disgusting government by anybody's standards, I think they want more from the Tories, and I'm being straight. And even if they don't, if I was a Tory, I would be all over this like a bleeding rash. I'd be saying, listen, all political parties make mistakes. God knows we made enough. There's a bit of reality here, rather. That is maybe my instinct is wrong, but I think you can plan and be, reactive. But I think a lot of people want more of a proactive approach from the Tories under Badenoch. That's what I mean.
So, Jeremy, the problem is the Kemi has and the Conservative Party has is that reform has broken the rules of politics. So the old rule of politics would say to you that you would elect a new Labour government with an absolutely stonking majority. They would have a honeymoon period where people would only be focusing on what the Labour government and the Labour Party is doing. And the Conservative Party would go into a corner, have a bit of an argument with itself, lick its wound, work out what it wants to do next. And then in 2 or 3 years' time, before an election, they'd pop up and say, hey, guys, remember us. We hope you've forgiven us. What a bloody mess the Labour Party, in this case, has made. Those rules have been broken for two reasons. First of all, because Starmer and his acolytes have made an absolute hash and shambles of running the country in a way that no other government in its first year has ever done.
Here.
History of media. So people have looked at the Labour Party and gone, oh my goodness, what on earth did we vote for? You're worse than the Tories. They then looked up and said, and where are the Tories? And we're nowhere because we're licking our wounds in the corner. And Reform is there, almost like the real opposition, sticking it to Starmer and all of these terrible policies. And they've gone, right, these guys are new. These guys haven't got a legacy. These guys aren't having a discussion about where it went wrong. They're just new and positive. And that's why I go back to the first point I made. I don't think they could be dismissed. I'm not sure it's real. I'm not sure that Reform are the panacea. I don't think they've got an answer to all the country's ills. But the Conservative Party need to accept the game. The rules of the game have changed. Kemi Badenoch needs to come out of the blue corner, swinging at Keir Starmer, swinging at Nigel Farage and Reform, but mainly with a new plan for Britain that appeals to British voters. And until she does that, this downward spiral of the Conservative Party, which I'm very sorry to see, will not stop.
It's really interesting for me. You make I think it's a really interesting point, so I'm going to be very direct. I've had loads of Tories say this to me. Generic for Badenoch within 12 months. Only way that you'll garner. That's where a lot of Tories will say, if you'd gone for Robert Generic, the further right, not far right, just a little bit to the right of the wet lettuces that many in the Tory party became, that would be important. People are texting me going, Rupert Lowe join the Tories next. If Generic's done a good job, to be fair. He's one of the few that you look at and you go, I buy what he's saying, I like the clarity, I like the force. Why didn't they pick him?
Well, it's a democratic process, and Robert Jenrick has done a really good job because he understands, he gets that the rules of politics has changed. He is there swinging and punching and harrying the government. The only thing I would say, the concern I would have, and I think it's probably the concern of many Conservative members, is Robert Jenrick in what he is saying is so close to Nigel Farage and Reform. Why not just vote Reform? It's like people who say, you know, I'll have a skimmed milk latte. If you want a latte, have it with full fat milk.
Ah, you northern heathen northerner.
We don't even call them lattes, we call them milky coffees.
Yeah, right. You warm it over fire, I know.
If you really, really care about immigration, you're not necessarily going to support Robert Jenrick and the Conservatives. You'll just vote reform. And that's why you can't beat reform by aping reform.
Couple of other stories, and I'd love to get you to. It's great to have you back on. It's been too long. So here's the thing. You might have heard me say this. We now live in a world, we live in a country, and you lot tried Rwanda, it wasn't universally popular, but all I've heard from this pathetic government for 10 months is, we're going to smash the gangs. That hasn't happened. The numbers are going through the roof as the weather gets better. Today, an alleged Palestinian gunman who crossed the channel illegally and got it. This is a man who called for the slaughter of all Jews and was filmed with an AK-47 rifle. There's that. There's the story, fact, that illegal foreign criminals are committing 25% of sex crimes. Fact. And then Port Adrian and Joanne Fenton today, who came back from France in their motorhome. I don't know if you heard the story. And some wise spark, when they got back to Dover, said, I think you'll find there's an illegal migrant under there. We didn't deport. Just what you take on this, Jay. We didn't deport the illegal migrant. He got sent to a hotel and given lasagna and green salad, probably, and a comfortable bed and some money and a phone. They got fined 1,500 quid. The world, this country has gone mad, Jake, mad.
Well, look, again, a lot of things there, Jeremy, starting at the top. Lots of people, I went down to Dover with talk 12 months ago now, and we spoke to people down there, and they said, look, we are allowing fighting-age males into the country. We have no idea of their background, their history, what they believe in, what they may have done, because they throw their passports away on the way over. So you're right. Really good that we've caught this guy who has appalling opinions about Jewish people. He should be deported. Anyone who has opinions like that about Jewish people should be deported from this country. Who else has got through? Who else do we not know about? How can people sleep safe in their beds knowing that terrorists, criminals, people with, vile and disgusting views are coming into this country? And that actually is the failure of Keir Starmer. He said he had a plan. And he said he was going to smash the gang. We have given £500 million to the French to patrol the streets of the beaches in France. That only happened last week, having given them money over a year ago. They're not allowed to enter the water, the police, in case they get their feet wet to stop the dinghies coming over. It is absolutely crazy. We have got to stop giving this money to France and invest in some deterrents like Rwanda. I appreciate people didn't like Rwanda, but any deterrent would be better.
Can I suggest the best deterrent?
Has lost its way.
I'd have come to your cabinet minister meeting and told the entire Conservative government how you could stop immigration in a heartbeat. Forget Rwanda. Why is it so goddamn easy? Well, I'll tell you why, because it's attractive, isn't it, this country? Because for the very reasons that I just said. If you're going to say to people, and there are loopholes and ways of getting here, by the way, you want to make the effort. You might even, because look, you'll get a 4-star hotel, you'll get this, it's too soft. And I understand the British people and why they went towards reform, because they were basically saying this a year ago. Hold on a second. I pay my taxes. I never break the law. I'm a normal person. I'm not racist in any which way, but I'm sort of 10th in the queue behind people who don't deserve jack, and they're having everything, and they're being treated, and they're having excuses made for them, and I'm being blamed. I'm at the back of the queue. That's the real issue. We are too soft. I suspect that if we closed our borders and said to the people who weren't working, you're going to do some of the work, I'm afraid, whilst you look for work, you're going to give something back for your dole, and we actually said we're going to close our borders because we cannot afford to provide public services to the very people who have paid their stamp, I think it would be a massive moment. Why isn't a government or a party prepared to say or do that?
Well, I think you'll find, Jeremy, that reform is saying lots of those things, but I actually think this isn't an issue about race. What the British people really believe in, I think it's a fundamental part of being British, is the idea of fair play, the idea of people who put in should be able to take out. And that is why people are so appalled and offended by this. They understand that they cannot see an NHS dentist with their kids. Immigrants are doing it straight away, coming to this country illegally. They can't get a doctor's appointment. Immigrants are doing it, coming to this country illegally. Their children cannot get on the housing ladder, even to rent a property. Immigrants are being given houses within days of arriving in this country. This is not racist. This is just an offence to the British belief, the British value of fair play. And until political parties get that and accept that, we will have this continuing issue where people are getting progressively more angry. I know, Jeremy, I am getting angrier every single day about what is happening on our borders. It makes me scared as a parent. It makes me furious as a taxpayer. And as a patriot who believes in fair play, I think it's absolutely un-British.
Could not agree with you more. I'd love your take on this final story, Jake. It's great to have you on. Do it more often. Now, I'm not a fan of Shabana Mahmood, but she seems to have finally stood up for what seems to be common sense to a degree. There's this sentencing council. It turned out last week the sentencing council didn't like the fact that, well, they basically said if you're an ethnic minority or you're a gender minority, you know, transgender or whatever, we really need to look at when we sentence you. We need to be understanding of your situation. Forget the fact you've broken the law. That's irrelevant. You know, forget the victim. Let's make an excuse. So basically, old Mahmood jumped up and down and said, I'm not having that, although the sentencing council is not under her jurisdiction. I think she wrote quite a strong letter saying you need to consider this. Top judges, surprise, surprise, have today hit back at claims they're imposing a two-tier justice system that favours ethnic and gender minorities. The Sentencing Council have rebuked Mahmood's demand to abandon their controversial new guidance. Last week it was issued telling judges to take into account that person might be guilty, but if their faith, their ethnicity or their gender is different, maybe you should consider a softer sentence. Jake, this is where I struggle, honestly, not to implode, and people say, how do you do this for 3 hours? We are now in a country that is basically, even the Labour Justice Secretary thinks this is mad. We are now saying that you can break the law and there can be an excuse for you to get away for a certain sentence that's probably relevant for the crime you've committed, simply because of your sexuality, your religion or your ethnicity. Great Britain, mate, you talk about people, British people getting fed up. That is absolutely appalling, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's completely unfair, Jeremy. And again, it goes back to offending, you know, the idea of British fair play. Everyone should be equal in the eyes of the law. Punishment should be equal for a crime. Let's just put the counterfactual to what this two-tier justice system is really proposing, this sentencing guidelines. If I were to say to you that any political party in this country proposed that if you were black or if you were gay or if you were any sort of minority, you would receive a more severe sentence, people quite correctly would describe that as racist, outrageous, homophobic, you know, genderphobic, whatever it may be. And it would be an absolute disgrace. Proposing the reverse of this is a similar disgrace. And that's why Shabana Mahmood, not a political ally of mine, is absolutely right to oppose this. This is complete overreach by judges. Everyone, I can tell you, I'm a lawyer, Jeremy, everyone in the country should be equal before the eyes of the law. And if we throw away that fundamental tenet of British common law and criminal law, we will not be recognisable as a country.
Breaking news, I'd love your response to Sir Jake Berry. Former Labour MP Mike Amesbury has said he will step aside at the earliest opportunity after he was given a suspended 10-week prison sentence for punching a man in the face in the street in his Frodsham constituency some months ago. This will now trigger a by-election. This is very interesting. Mike Amesbury, God knows what happened there. He obviously lost the plot, was punching the bloke. Got the prison sentence, appeal, got let out. There's lots of people saying, come on, you need to do something. You need to step aside. That will happen. Let's talk about that area in Cheshire, Frodsham. Let's talk about a by-election. Now, I would have said to you before last Thursday, I reckon Reform are going to go full in, absolutely, on that. Things have changed in the last 5 days. Are you going to put yourself forward for Frodsham, Sir Jake Berry?
No, I won't be putting myself forward anywhere, Jeremy. But what I would say is
why, man? Why not? I thought you wanted to get back.
I'm on a long-term political break, and my wife's in charge of enforcing that. So I don't.
Are you not ever standing again?
I'm on a political break. I didn't say I was over. Most people probably think I'm over anyway.
What we're saying as mates is that you don't think the Tories are going to win that seat.
Well, no, I don't think we are going to win that seat, and I'll tell you why. It's not a seat we would normally expect to win. Mike Amesbury has been in there since, I think, 2015 or 2017. It is traditionally a safe Labour seat. The Frodsham bits, I know I was brought up in Liverpool, the Frodsham bits are a bit Tory, but the Runcorn bits and the other bits are very strongly Labour. If I was kid, I mean, first of all, Mike Amesbury, he's made a terrible mistake. I'm very pleased to say he's made the right decision today. He's stepped down. He's put his constituents first. And whatever else wrongly he's done, that is the right thing to do. If I were Keir Starmer looking at this is a major, major headache for him. Reform are already campaigning there every single day, every single weekend. I don't know who their candidate is, but I assume they'll be getting on and selecting someone well-known very, very shortly. If Keir Starmer loses this, it means that Reform aren't just taking chunks out of the Conservative Party in safe, traditional, safe Conservative seats. It means that they are making massive inroads in safe Labour seats. That's a big headache for Keir Starmer. He's got a lot of MPs with very small majorities who'd be really worried about that. And the calls will come on him not to follow Reform, but to go further to the left. Look at the debate they're having about cutting welfare. Actually, something I think is the correct thing to do. He's going to have a major rebellion on that. And things like these by-election results, if he loses it, will make it harder and harder for him to stand up to his own party. And we will see him, to pacify his own party, going further and further to the left.
Who wins that seat?
I think it's too close to call, but I wouldn't bet against Reform. In 6 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time when the election happens, this Rupert Lowe situation in a moment may be forgotten about, but who knows?
So good to have you on. The final question is, if we wanted to have you on next week, should we just ring Lady Berry from now on? Because obviously you only
she's the boss. She's the boss, Jeremy. I'd happily come on next Monday, but let me just say this to you. I was so pleased last week when you gave me a shout-out on the radio. It is the first time I've had a shout-out since I was 17 years old, so thank you.
Christ, did they have radio then? Did they have radio then, Berry? What's going? Give my love to...
We called it the wireless then, Jeremy.
Good man. Give my love to Lady Berry, your top man. Thank you. Sir Jay Berry, live and exclusive on Talk Drive 525. We're live across the UK. So much to talk about. 0344 4991000. That breaking news on Drive. Labour MP Mike Amesbury, the man who was given a 10-week suspended jail sentence for punching the living daylights out of a constituency, God knows why, has said just now that he will step aside at the earliest opportunity, which will trigger a by-election in Runcorn and Frodsham. A safe Labour seat. But you heard it there from Sir Jake Berry. Reform already in the constituency, already campaigning. But for a seat that they'd feel really quite confident in doing well in, is that going to be derailed because of the argument between Farage and Lowe? More on Talk Drive in 3.
If I was Zelensky, what I would be doing this week, I'd be offering some sort of wonderful award, a la an unprecedented second invitation for a state visit with King Charles, to some bravery honour or something to Donald Trump, and showering him with all the praise and all the love and adulation that he wants, to do whatever I'd have to do to get the military aid and intelligence sharing that I needed to save my people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5:28, we're live across the UK. Don't forget, at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, there's only one place to be, Monday to Friday. The amazing Mike Graham, my mate, is here with Morning Glory. The only way to wake up. You want to, honestly, this, but have you watched this? You can get a bumper sticker with his face on to put on your car. You can have Migrant of the Day. The man is a legend, a broadcasting legend. I'm proud to call him a friend. Tune in tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. If you want to be part of this vain attempt at a sort of makeshift show, 0344 419, what did I say that for? 0344 419 1000. Pete the Mole, I don't know why anybody would call themselves a mole. Maybe Trump has told Nige to find a way out because something terrible is going to happen. As we know, Trump will always give Nigel a job in the States. Brilliant. So you've just made me convince myself, Pete, that something terrible is going to happen. Hello to, who is this? Brian. Interesting. Am I the only one that thinks that the trouble that Reform are in has happened only since Zia Youssef took over as chairman? Maybe the investigation should look a little closer at him. Bring back Ben and Rupert and tell Nigel that the country is more important than his ego trip. Brian says, I'm a Reform voter and member for now. That's the problem. You see, the minute there's negativity, that is the problem. Alan's in Bedfordshire, which is brave. The issue with the strong-minded individual who comes from a background of being chairmans or leaders is able to relinquish control. Rupert needs to appreciate that Nigel's campaigned for decades and deserves his moment. Rupert needs to wait for his opportunity, but more importantly than anything else, he needs to put the party first. Gary Mitchell, good afternoon. To the phone line, let's go to Cheshire. Susan, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you, and enjoying your programme as I always do.
You're very kind.
Right.
You paid the money.
With regard to the Reform Party, it is Nigel Farage who is the only one who can take that party into a winning issue. Rupert Lowe comes over as a decent man, but there may be an undercurrent going on. I've got a feeling there could be. There's more to come out. And he's clearly a very good businessman. But not many people have even heard of him, however good he is at speaking, and I've heard him.
That's how I feel.
So without Nigel Farage, like him or not, the Reform Party will just fade away. And
Nigel Farage is the reason there is a Reform Party. I thought, Susan, somebody said something very interesting earlier, though, which I think is very salient in this discussion, which is that actually you've got let's say four. You've got these men who are successful businessmen, people who are leaders, people who have made decisions, and that's a bunch of egos. One of my criticisms of the Labour Party, which will be maintained from now till the end of time, is you've got this faceless bunch of MPs who have never done a real day's work in their lives, and they've studied politics, gone to university, worked for the council, whatever, put that voice on, and suddenly they're MPs. The Reform Party MPs are self-made, successful businessmen and leaders in their field, and there will be egos and there will be all that's attached. I agree with you. I also think that we should look back at when Musk stuck his size 10 in and said, Nigel Farage needs to go and Rupert Lowe's a good man. Maybe that touched Rupert Lowe's ego. I don't know. But I'm with and I voted for Reform. I'm with the people who have texted in this afternoon and said, whatever happens, bang your bleeding heads together, because the issues that this country need resolving, in my humble opinion and many people's, are best resolved by Reform being part of those discussions. That isn't going to happen if you tear yourselves to shreds.
No, No, but I'm afraid now it's gone too far. They can't. I mean, Rupert Lowe has. I don't do Facebook much, but I did look at his Facebook page, and it's nothing but me, moan, and I this and I that, which I know is the modern trend. They all put everything on tweet, Facebook, you name it. But it didn't look very good, I don't think.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Will you you'll maintain your belief in reform despite what's been going on?
Yes, but I think they without Farage, no, it'll die. Without a doubt, no, however good the other people are, because it wasn't until Farage came back that reform went back on the map. You need
that person. You need the epicentre. Nigel Farage is like the Mike Graham of reform, isn't he? Mike Graham is the epicentre of this radio station, and without Mike Graham, we're all finished. That's the whole point. Thank you very much indeed, Susan in Cheshire. I'm right. Why are you looking? Of course we are. You owe your jobs to him, don't you? And Jodie, your hangover's getting worse. You've half asleep, woman. Honestly, she's supposed to be answering the phone. She looks like she'd be in rehab. 0344 499 1000. Let's continue this vain attempt. Delighted to welcome our next guest. I have to get all professional now. Andrew Allison is the head of campaigns, Popular Conservatives. And Mr. Allison, a very good... Oh, there he is again. Look at him.
Oh, I'm here again, yes.
What are you in front of, man? What's the picture behind your head? What is that? You look like...
The picture behind my head, it's got lots of pictures of my children on, so I tend to sort of, if I'm in there, I tend to block it out.
Content yourself with the fact that I actually couldn't... My head might be big, but it's not big enough to cover a picture because I've got so many bleeding children. Andrew, a very good afternoon. Let's try a different angle with you. We've done the poor people who arrived home in their motor home and got fined 1,500 quid because there was a illegal migrant tied underneath. Let's talk to you about the BBC, Andrew Allison. The BBC, almost on a weekly basis, is pennies for heaven for this show and this station because, you know, we've talked incessantly about how your state broadcaster should be, you know, unbiased and down the middle, and we all know there seems to be this sort of woke left-wing ideology. But, I mean, even they, by their own standards... Did you see that dreadful Tim Davie the other day in front of the Culture Committee being asked about Hugh Edwards? And were you going to try and get his salary/pension back? And he said, well, the process is very difficult. Today it transpired that the wonderful BBC, spent by you and me, really, has spent nearly 1.3 million quid on the Hugh Edwards scandal, including 340 grand on legal advice, over the decision to suspend him on full pay. That's a lot of money, isn't it, for a wrong decision? But they've also spent £1 million on a review of the BBC's non-editorial complaints, policies and procedures conducted by Deloitte and commissioned in 2023 after Edwards was accused of paying a teenager for sexually explicit images. Is it just me, Andrew, or are all these people so completely divorced from reality? Here is the reality. You knew that man had watched and looked at sexually explicit images. You continued to pay him the best part of 450 grand a year of taxpayer licence fee money whilst he was waiting to go to trial. When he was found guilty, you quite rightly said what you said. But he's now got a pension, and at every conceivable opportunity you go, oh, it's very, very difficult. But you spend £1.5 million almost telling yourselves that you're crap at your job. Why not get his money back through the courts? I don't understand that.
When you look at what he was suspended for, you'd have thought there would have been a clause in his contract that said if you bring the corporation into disrepute...
There will have been. There will have been. That's the point. I've had these contracts for years. There will have been.
Yeah, of course there will have been. So you would have thought that he would have been suspended without pay. But, of course, as soon as you pay him for those however many months, 6 months, wasn't it, thereabouts? As soon as you pay him, I mean, getting the money back is going to be extremely difficult. I mean, who would voluntarily...
What about freezing his pension? That can't be difficult. That'll be generated through the BBC.
I don't think you can even do that.
We need Trump
with pensions law, but I mean the problem is that the BBC suspended him on full pay when they shouldn't have suspended him on full pay. I wouldn't voluntarily give back £200,000 if I knew that if it went to court I would be allowed to keep it. And as far as I can see from this story, if it went to court, he would be allowed to keep it simply because that's what the BBC agreed to at the time.
But so you understand how that would be. BBC. But you would understand how that will be abhorrent in the minds of many people who resent...
Well, of course it's abhorrent in my mind, but the problem lies with the BBC, who actually allowed this to happen in the first place. They should have suspended him without pay for bringing the corporation into disrepute. As simple as that.
But what can you expect? What can you expect from an organisation? This is also today, Andrew. The BBC pays senior managers from diverse backgrounds more than those who are not resulting in a reverse pay gap, despite the BBC having committed to equal pay. The BBC's diversity and inclusion plan for 21 to 23 committed to investing in diverse leadership and meeting its 50-50-12 targets, at least 50% women, 20% black, Asian or minority ethnic and 12% of disabled employees. But now we're actually, if you work at the BBC and you are an ethnic minority, a religious, whatever, you're going to get more money. Somebody said to me the other day from a very, very large television network in this country, people will moan, I will get messages, but this is a fact, that we are now in a situation in this country where if you perhaps went to university, came out and decided a career in television was yours and you're white and 25, you're screwed for the next 20 years. I think that is an absolute dreadful indictment of the United Kingdom, don't you? It's outrageous.
Yeah, I do, and I think you said that to me last time you interviewed me a couple of weeks ago. Yes, but not everybody was watching, Jeremy. So
Thank you.
It's good. It's
just made me look like a right idiot. That's fantastic. I don't mind. I'm used to it. It's fine.
It's good. It's good to repeat these things. So I think it's true, but
it might be good to repeat it, but I only do it because I can't bloody remember saying it in the first place.
Well, either way, but I think what we've got here is, the government requiring large corporations, large businesses to say what their gender pay gap is. And you could see where this was going to go. Everyone's panicking that they're not getting it right, so they're going to throw a few more quid in that direction. And maybe that person who's going to be hired, a white male, should be down a little bit lower salary than what you would have ordinarily paid them. But this is what's happening. And they're tying themselves up in knots. And the BBC, of course, is utterly brilliant at this. So it's trying to make sure that it doesn't have any problems against gay people. So we'll pay the gay people more, disabled people, we pay them a little bit more. And then you end up with this mess. Why don't they just believe what the rest of us believe? I'm sure all the listeners and viewers to this show do, Jeremy. In a meritocratic society, the best person, be it a man or a woman, gets the job. Simple as that. It's based on merit.
But you see, the reason I go on about it and then I forget that I've said it because it's the beginning of the end at 60 years. I don't understand, and I am turning into my dad. I'm morphing into him. I don't understand how anybody thinks that in the long run, whilst box ticking is apparently very moral and wonderful, how that's going to benefit any of us or the country or any business. It's utter rubbish. It is just virtue signalling rubbish. You are then saying to people, right, who are not the best at their job, have a job because you are of a colour, of a creed, of a religion or of a sexuality. We now live in a country that says that if you perpetuate a crime... have you heard the story today? If this doesn't send you over the edge... we were talking about migration. Poor old... Have you heard about Adrian and Joanne Fenton? They came back from France in their motorhome.
Yes. Yeah.
These poor buggers, they arrived in Dover and somebody went, I think you'll find you've got a migrant under there. Look, there's a migrant. He gets put in a hotel... right, given a mobile phone, a bubble bath and probably some dinner, they got fined £1,500. So now we live in a country that says, I'll tell you what, let's screw the victim. Let's screw everybody who's never done anything wrong and benefit everybody else. And the wokeness that is everywhere is saying the same message to people, isn't it?
Yes, it is. No, it is. It's as if people, just ordinary law-abiding people in this country, will just get screwed, whereas those people who come into this country illegally will just get everything. I've seen images before, and I don't know whether they're mocked-up images or they're genuine, but you've got a former service person there lying homeless in the street who served his country, for many years in our armed forces, near a migrant hotel where you got all these people, I live in East Yorkshire and the main hotel near the railway station, I don't know if it's still being used as a migrant hotel, but basically just taken over.
I don't understand. I don't actually want to be in a country that says that thank you for serving, you can be on the streets and some illegal criminal can be in a hotel.
This really annoys people that this sort of thing is happening. But it is happening. and that's why there has to be change in this country.
You're a top man, Andrew Ellison. You'll be up at 6 o'clock to listen to Mike Graham, I take it, because you're a loyal man, and keep your head still.
I actually, strangely enough, I'm usually up at 6 o'clock, and it usually is around about that time, between 6 and 6:15 when it goes on. So yes.
Good man. Excellent. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. Head of Campaigns for Popular Conservatism, Andrew Allison. What is it? 18 minutes to 6. Where does time go when you're having fun? 0344 499 1000. Talk Drive till 7.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is it 5:45, and it's a very important moment because my daughter Iris, who is year and a month, is watching the television. Rissy Roo, hello. Rissy Roo, she's called. I don't mind abusing my position. You lot can get stuff. Love you, Riss. 0344 499 1000. 2 quick calls and sport on the way. All of that ahead of 6. We'll go to Southend. Dave, you're on Talk Drive. Couple of minutes. What you got?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Carl. Firstly, before we go on about Farage, I mean, come on, about you and Mike Graham. I mean, you two love each other or something. I mean, you can't say these sort of things that if it wasn't for Mike Graham, we wouldn't have Talk TV. Come on. That's gone a bit too far.
Argue the toss with me about it because I'll take you on.
Well, it's easy. There are other people that work for Talk TV. I mean,
I'm sure there are, but Mike Graham is the epicentre of... I'm sure there are, but Mike Graham is the very reason that I am here, and I love the bones of him, so stuff it.
All I can say is that when you get your little daffodil and you go, do you love me not? I mean, come on, let's stop talking silly. There's more people at Talk TV than Mr. Graham. He's a nice chap, fine, but...
What are you talking about, Harry Cole? That'll wind a few.
No, not him.
That'll wind a few.
Anyway, let's get on to Farage.
What's the name of the bloke on at 7 o'clock?
Got no idea.
Brilliant.
You lot keep changing.
Kevin O'Sullivan.
Oh, yes, I like him as well. Now, the epicenter's around him as well.
Julia Hartley-Brewer?
Yes, and Mr. Collins. Like I said, there's all of you. You all play your part. Okay?
No, it's all about Mike. Crack on.
Yeah, well, okay, whatever. Anyway, Mr. Talking about Farage now, right?
Yep.
Being serious, okay? With Farage, I've never trusted him since the day that he chucked in those 300 seats for Boris Johnson, okay, in the election. I've never trusted him. I've always thought he's not that great a politician. But my point is this. I believe he's always wanted to be in charge of the Conservative Party. And I think he's going to do the disruption with the Reform because he doesn't like Mr. Lowe being popular with the Reform voters. And I think he's going to end up, by the next election, being with the Conservatives. And I think that's his battle plan all along.
I've never trusted him, and I never will.
It's very interesting. Many opinions. Dave in Southend, you're a legend to be on the show. We appreciate both your opinions and your involvement. Liam's a new caller. He's in York. 1 minute only, Liam. What you got?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that when Reform got in, well, at the next election, I had a lot of optimism for Reform, and I had a brighter future. But now I just feel like Reform's going more towards the centre. And I listen to yourself and Mike Graham in the morning, and I think, yeah, that is what I believe, and that's what I want for my country. But then I also listen to Reform and thinking, well, that's not exactly what they're saying.
I think it's... I'll tell you, one thing I would say in Nigel's defence, which I sort of... And God knows what's going to materialise. We're just very honest to you on this station. But I think somebody once said to me, I said it earlier in the show, that when you get nearer power, you're a big responsible party leader, etc., etc., you have to... There are certain things that you have to play, the game that you have to play. And I suspect that Rupert Lowe can continue to spout all the stuff that Nigel could before he was the leader of Reform. Maybe there's a clash of egos. I don't know. For me, the concept of Reform... The concept of having a party that can be labelled far-right but patently isn't, that is based on the very things that I was brought up to believe in, you know, conservative values, I think that being around is more important than whoever is there. That, for me, would be the sadness if this bust-up resulted in that not being a success. Liam, we really appreciate your call. Thank you for tuning in from York. Beautiful city. One of my many daughters is there at university. We have a sports update next on Talks, 12 minutes to 6.
If I was Zelensky, what I would be doing this week, I'd be offering some sort of wonderful award, you know, a la an unprecedented second invitation for a state visit with King Charles, to some bravery honour or something to Donald Trump, and showering him with all the praise and all the love and adulation that he wants, to do whatever I'd have to do to get the military aid and intelligence sharing that I needed to save my people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
For the tea, Jodie, is there anything to nibble on? Gone. 0344 499 1000. Hit the button names.
Sport Summary on Talk.
A very good evening and welcome to Monday from a broadcasting talent. Samuel Ellard, hello.
Jeremy, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. How are we? We okay?
Yes, how's Guantanamo Bay? I'm joking. Before we talk about the biggest football match in the world tonight, West Ham at home against a Tsunami. Difficult night for me. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about the Premier League yesterday. I think, and you are going to go, oh my God, what's wrong with you? I think if it carries on like this, Arsenal are in danger of not making the top four. There you are. I've said it.
No, I don't think that's an outrageous thing to say at all. I mean, one thing, the title race has been over now for a couple of weeks. And one thing now that is apparent, even though my maths isn't great, they're a lot closer to the teams outside of the top four than they are Liverpool. A draw yesterday for Arsenal against Man United. Liverpool went to their 15 points behind Liverpool. They are just 8 points ahead of fifth place Man City. So, yeah. The aim now for Arsenal would be to make sure they finish in the top four. Look, I know they've had a tricky couple of weeks. They've dropped a lot of points. More drop points yesterday against the Man United team that we know are struggling. They will finish in the top four. It's probably going to be top five this season for Champions League places. We're going to get an extra place. But yeah, they haven't won 3 league games, Jeremy. And yesterday, a frustrating day for Arsenal. They lacked a little bit of quality going forward. They felt quite open defensively. And yeah, unfortunately, for a neutral's point of view, as we enter the final couple of weeks of the season, title race, goodness me, well and truly done, right?
And as a Liverpool fan, not a neutral, how does it feel?
It feels good. I don't want to... It's felt like this Liverpool team have just been defensively the best team in the league this year, really solid. Alisson's been great, Van Dijk's been great. When you got Mo Salah having the season of a lifetime, I always thought we had that little cushion on Arsenal. We didn't look like we were going to drop off, and I wasn't sure, given Arsenal's injuries, that they had it in them to push us. Did I think we'll be 15 clear with 9 to go? Absolutely not. But yeah, Arne Slot's come in. He's done an incredible job. We've got a Champions League game tomorrow night against PSG, and then that cup final on Sunday. It's a good time to be a Liverpool fan.
Can I shout out as well? You'll probably tell me to shut up. I think one of the managers of the season, not just because he beat Man City, I think Nuno Espirito Santo has done the most incredible job at Nottingham Forest. This was 40 players signed on a whim. They didn't even know where the training ground was. I think he has fostered the most. They were very good against Man City. I think they'll make the Champions League. I think it's an astonishing performance as a manager. I genuinely do.
People will argue, Jeremy, that even if Liverpool win the league, and that's an amazing achievement. People are probably right to argue that finishing third with Nottingham Forest is probably harder than coming first with Liverpool. It's been a ridiculous season. They had won 1 of their 4 games going into City, and maybe for the first time I had a little bit of doubt in my mind, could the wheels come off? And then they put in the most Nottingham Forest performance of all time against Man City. They had 30% possession in the game. They sit deep, but they look so comfortable in doing it. And then they're so good, so dangerous with the counter-attack. They beat Man City. They're third in the table. Again, 5th place could be Champions League football this season. They've got a 5-point cushion on 6th place Brighton. He's done a ridiculous job. Ridiculous. They're an unbelievable team. And yeah, fair play. Beat Man City 1-0 on Saturday.
Tonight, Premier League, West Ham. Under Graham Potter. JK? Well, this is a problem for me. West Ham's my team. Graham Potter, the new manager, on the back of 2 victories against Newcastle, Tsunami. All my best friends in Newcastle spend all my time there. I have a theory about this game tonight, which I've said to the boys. That hasn't gone down particularly well, but I've said it. Newcastle, I saw the head coach saying, we won't take our foot off the gas. I'm not going to rest anybody. But they already have lost for Sunday's Carabao Cup final against your team. Sven Botman is out for the season. Lewis Hall, who was going to get an England call out for the season. Anthony Gordon, that red card, out for the next 3 games. I don't care if you tell me I'm talking crap. If I'm a Newcastle footballer, I'm going to try my backside off tonight. But am I going to go from 80, 95% to 100 in case I could be wrong. I could, and I would never disrespect the tune. I think this has got draw written all over it tonight. Absolutely got draw written all over it.
Yeah, I think a draw is a good bet for this evening, JK. Yeah, it's the tough one, isn't it? When you got that game a few days away, most important game of a lot of these players' careers. That challenge. Look, one thing we should say: this is also a big game tonight for Newcastle. They find themselves 9th in the table, and they'll have real aspirations and ambitions to get back into the Champions League. They're only 5 points off 4th place, but their league form has been poor. They've lost 4 of their last 6. They had this a few years ago when they played in the Carabao Cup final 2 years ago against United. Their form really dipped going into it. So look, it is a big game this evening. He definitely won't rest players for tonight. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, you're right. Back-to-back wins for West Ham. They can go above Manchester United with West Ham. To be fair, if you win tonight, Jez, you go 16th up to 13th. You can jump 3 places. Newcastle, poor form. West Ham getting better. I like a draw this evening.
All right, listen, rugby, let's do it. England were rubbish 3 days ago. Win again against Italy. Bonus try. Second in, of course, the Six Nations table. It's all on the final right, but 3 in a row for England. Marcus Smith came on, looked a totally different player, not playing at fullback. Fantastic.
Yeah, so this is remarkable. Some weekend, England now best placed to take advantage of any final day slip-up by the Six Nations leaders, France. As you mentioned,
we love the French to slip up. Slimy. Whatever.
Well, England with a 7-try victory over Italy, but England now take on Wales. It'll be the second match of what's going to be a Super Saturday on the 15th. 1 point now behind France, who play Scotland and Paris later in the day, but England 82 worse off in points difference. That means, bar any extraordinary scoreline in Cardiff, basically if France, if they beat Scotland, they win the Six Nations.
Well, I spent Thursday and Friday in Edinburgh with my daughter ahead of that game, Scotland playing Wales, and the Scots are mad. I think Scotland will do a favour to the English against France.
You reckon?
And England, I do, I genuinely do.
Wow.
I think they're going to win ugly. What?
Yeah, I watched the Ireland-France game on Saturday. I'm not a Six Nation expert, rugby union expert. It was some game. You almost just expected Ireland at home to get the victory. France were incredible. And look,
yeah, but they've lost Dupont. They've lost Dupont. That will make a massive
he went off
difference.
injured, but they still come back to win. One thing's for certain: France 16, England 15, Ireland 14. They call it Super Saturday. It's going to live up to its expectation. It's set out beautifully on Saturday, Jess.
Right, champions Joe Feet, not interested. India beat New Zealand. We've a minute and a half. The Cheltenham Festival starts tomorrow, and Alan Brazil's TalkSport breakfast live from Cheltenham. I'm going to be there Thursday, Friday. How excited are you about the Cheltenham Festival of Racing?
Yeah, Jez, you know what it's like to be there. I've been lucky to be there for the last 3 years. It's always a special week, isn't it? I've been on Adam Brazil's breakfast shows at Cheltenham. And basically, the only thing we care about on TalkSport is Adam Brazil going to make 5 days? That's the only thing we need to talk about here. Forget about the racing. Forget about the content of the breakfast show. Yes or no, JK? Will the big man make 5 days this week?
Absolutely not. There is no way on God's earth Alan Brazil makes it to Friday. He'll be in rehab by Wednesday afternoon. I'm telling you categorically, but full coverage throughout the day. The breakfast show live from the course. Cheltenham, the Festival of Racing from Presby Park, all on TalkSport throughout the whole day. Maybe a tip or two. What?
Enjoy the day. Are you in a box? Are you in the Royal Box? Where are you going to be positioned on Thursday and
Cheltenham Club, my friend, and the Royal Box for tea, of course. Yes, very nice.
Good man.
You think I'm joking, don't you? Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Tips for Cheltenham on the way. TalkSport, of course, live from Cheltenham. Day 1 tomorrow from Presby Park. We've an hour to go on Talk Drive for Monday. You want to be part of this tempt at a show? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. You can text us on 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We'll do the noise at 6 or even...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, welcome back. Hour 3 of Talk Drive for Monday across the UK, the home of common sense and free speech. Thank you for tuning in, because when you do, it gives us so much more time to work out what's coming next. So much in the news, and in the next hour, your chance to be involved. A very good afternoon. I wish I knew who half these people were, but they don't put their names down. Oh, Derek. I was a Tory member. I jumped ship when Boris decided to become a Green Liberal. Same old Tories talking tough on immigration and law and order while out of office. Farage has an ego which needs taking down a peg, but this country's only chance at the moment is reform, and the people need to get their heads together. David, a very good afternoon in the Cotswolds, very posh there. Yes, the problem Nigel has got is reform will always attract high-achieving men and women with strong beliefs rather than the dross that join the other two parties. I have no idea who joins the Liberal Democrats, he says. I don't know why at all. Managing Reform MPs will always be hard because of that. Nige might as well get the practicing now. He'll have 400 more in the next general election. Do you think so, David? Bev's in Southampton. Do the people who drive the boats get fined £1,500 per person? Maybe that could be a bit of a deterrent as well. Very interesting. Bev in Southampton replying to my favourite story all day. Good afternoon. Hi, Kyle. Fair enough. How are those truly equal opportunities? It seems that the original meaning of equal opportunities has been altered by the left woke bees. Why does it feel like white people are being sidelined? This doesn't make sense at all. Couldn't agree more. Graham's in Birmingham. Graham with an E, which is the posh way of spelling Graham. Reform would have no MPs without Nigel Farage, but they need to come to some sort of compromise, as we need reform to save this great party. What do you want to talk about in the next hour? Reform, the bust-up? Do you want to talk about how a Palestinian migrant who called for the slaughter of all Jews and was filmed with an AK-47 rifle arrived in this country because our migration service is so crap? Perhaps you want to talk about how unfair this country has become, whereby you've got to feel sorry for Adrian, I'm doing it again, and Joanne Fenton, haven't you? They went away on a camping holiday in the motorhome and they came back via Dover, got back to Dover, and some numbskull said, well, a numbskull border force person said, I think you'll find you've got a migrant under your car. And this migrant had been holding on all the way from France. So what do we do as the United Kingdom? I'll tell you what we do. We get him from underneath the car and we transport him in a taxi at your expense, and we put him in a 4-star hotel, give him a steak dinner, a mobile phone, and probably some cash, possibly even a massage. They, hard-working, unsuspecting taxpayers, get fined 1,500 quid. The world's gone nuts. 0344 499 1000. And a man who knows all about how the world has gone nuts, very nice and brings a bit of class to this otherwise vain attempt at it. Lord Marland, Conservative peer and former advisor to Bojo. Lord Marland, a very good afternoon, sir.
How are you, Jeremy? I'm obviously one of the dross, one of your...
You could never call his lordship a dross, really?
Well, you know, he referred to members of the other parts of dross. I'm one of the Conservative dross. But I'm very pleased to be on your programme to give a view on the Reform Party.
I just want to put this to you, actually, which I started 2 hours ago. And you are a member of the Tory party, and we've all done the conversations about how this dreadful Labour government wouldn't be in unless the Tories had lost the ear of the British people, and Reform grew by talking in my mind. And I was very honest. I'd been a Tory voter all my life, and I voted Reform because I was hacked off about things that, for me, were pure conservatism, were suddenly being labelled as far right. But this bust-up, let's for 1 minute think Farage, Lowe, successful men, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I don't get, Lord Marland, and you advised Boris. If it was me and I was Kemi Badenoch, I'd have got those 121 MPs in a room on Saturday morning and I'd gone, we can sit and strategise and talk about where we went wrong and allow everybody else to do this, that and the other. But this is a really good opportunity to put the boot in and score a few points, and more than anything, perhaps in the ears and eyes of many people in the United Kingdom, be part of the narrative. Because I've heard Jack from the Tories, and all I hear from the Tories is they're planning stuff. Is it a missed opportunity in your mind? And I'm being deadly serious.
No, I don't think it is at the moment. I've known Rupert Lowe, I wouldn't say all my life. Our mothers were at school together, so that gives you a rough idea. And he's a very committed very bristling with integrity and determination. Nigel has made a big mistake in picking this fight with Rupert, because Rupert will fight to the wire. And a lot of this has been trumped up, excuse the pun.
Yeah.
And I think for the benefit of their party, if I was them, I'd bury the hatchet as quickly as I could. I think for the Conservative Party, we should see what happens, because it's going to be quite interesting viewing. It could be the demise of reform. I think it's that serious. These are two very substantial people going to slug each other out. And
why? What do you think the problem is? Is it ego? Is it policy? Is it what somebody said earlier with respect, which is it seems that Rupert Lowe, ever since Musk complimented him and slagged off Farage, there seem to have been tensions. If you speak to reform sources...
I think, Jeremy, you know, Nigel has probably felt that Rupert has been briefing, which he hasn't. Rupert, you know, he's 67 years old. He's doing this because he just fundamentally, like you do, believe that Britain should change, and like I do, that we need Britain to change. He's gone into it entirely with that. He doesn't need to. He's given all his salary away. He's doing it because of genuine public service. I don't agree with him on everything, and doubtless you wouldn't, and doubtless many of your viewers don't. But I do believe that people who go in with genuine public service, and knowing him as I do, he doesn't have an ego that drives him and wants to lead the party. I don't think for a moment he ever thought he would be Prime Minister. He was totally surprised by what Musk said. All he wants is a party that's united, determined to change. And having spoken to him quite a lot recently, he's just not getting a message through to Nigel, who, by the way, I respect as well, that, you know, they have to have a strategy and a plan. And it is not just about 5 MPs running the country.
Is it? I mean, it's really interesting if you cut the response over the last few hours and days on this station. People are saying they're very, very polarised. They're saying there would be no reform without Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is the very essence of reform. Outside the Westminster bubble, nobody knows who the hell Rupert Lowe is. With respect, other people are saying.
I think that's totally, perfectly acceptable statement. But the contrary to that is, you know, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party are not based around one individual. No. Yes, they anoint an individual to run it, but they have a bunch of MPs and a bunch of people set to support that. And that's what Nigel, I'm sure, would seek to try and achieve, but hasn't so far. And he won't be able to run the country unless he does.
So is there a slight smirk on the lips of a Tory? I mean, this is the first time the Tories have had anything to lick their lips with, hasn't it, in the last 10 months? Well, I'm being serious.
The Conservative Party have been in the firing line for quite a long time. Quite nice to have someone else in the firing line.
I love your honesty.
I've just seen Kemi, as a matter of fact, and you know, she's not sort of licking her lips with the sort of because she's building her own policy and her own team to try and give an alternative to
what do you make of the first few months of Badenoch? It's very interesting as well. That's very polarising with our viewers. Some people are saying I wouldn't listen to the Tories ever again. Others are saying she's taking her time, she's getting it right. Others are saying, as I tried to say to you at the beginning, I want more narrative. She came out and had a go at the BBC today, but is she doing enough? And I'm not asking you to break party lines. I understand all about discipline, but is she being vocal enough? That's what I don't know.
Well, I think the trouble is when you have a party that's done so badly, which the current government has, it has, Jeremy, been the worst honeymoon I think any of us can ever remember in political terms. You kind of don't need to say anything and you kind of can't say anything because actually all you in the media are talking about is how bad they are. They're not saying how bad they are, let's have a look at what everyone else is. That's what they're saying is how bad they are. And so it takes up all the media time.
I suppose from my point of view, being very personal, totally straight with you, is I had always been a Tory. I explained to you why I went to Reform. The reason I want to hear more is because I want to know how the Tories are going to right the ship.
Yeah, well, you know, you and I, should we put it like that, would like to hear how they're going to right the ship. She's not going to do it in the time you and I want, obviously. She's going to do it in her own time, and we can only hope for her sake and for the Conservative Party's sake that she does it and it is a successful narrative that she delivers. I think we must wait a bit longer for that narrative. If that narrative doesn't come, then people will be asking questions, won't they?
Absolutely. I'd love your take on a couple of other things, if it's all right, because I do believe we now live in a world that is completely and utterly barking mad, Lord Marland. I'm an alleged Palestinian gunman who came into this country illegally on a small boat. This is a man who'd called for the slaughter of all Jews and had been filmed with an AK-47. On the same day, we found out that convicted sex crime criminals, 25% of them are foreigners who have come in illegally, but perhaps my favourite story of the day is poor old Adrian and Joanne Fenton, who came back from France in their motorhome to discover at Dover that there was a migrant attached to the bottom of their car. They had no idea about it. And I'd love your take on a country that basically did the following. He was removed from the bottom of the car, taken to a 4-star hotel, had a bubble bath, a nice steak dinner, and was given a lovely night and presumably, you know, can stay here forever. They were fined £1,500. I genuinely mean what I'm going to say. To the average men and women the length and breadth of this country, they are beginning to feel, I think in many instances, that they're at the back of the queue. I think it's disgusting.
The whole thing is absolutely disgusting. You want to go and bang your head against the brick wall. And I just think, you know, we've got so many things wrong in this country at the moment. There has got to be a change. This is why people voted for reform. The Conservative Party have got to show that we are going to make these changes, and we've got to do them with utmost vigour, because this country is falling apart. It really is.
I mean, I think I say that and people look at me, but I genuinely do believe it is falling apart. I mean, the other thing, very quickly, and we'll let you go, the BBC has been in the line and fire for a long time, certainly on certain stations, this one, but many people say, oh, come on, this is the state broadcaster. Today it turns out that they spent £1.3 million, right, 300 grand plus on legal advice over how they treated Hugh Edwards, and £1 million on a review of their non-editorial complaints, policies and procedure processes committee, procedure, whatever the hell that means. And you look at that and you think, so a man who's a convicted sex criminal now is still getting money, he did for 6 months, he's getting his pension, and again it's that whole thing that people go, why should I pay 172 quid? Their priorities are all wrong. It doesn't make sense. These are the things I want to hear the Tories or Reform talk about. This is exactly what we need to be talking about, surely.
And all I can say is thank God you are, because you're bringing it to the attention of everybody. And it really is, you know, as I said, this is a broken country. It's a country that just is walking, you know, in a dream through the issues that are going to affect it. And unless someone gets hold of this country and changes it, we are going to face an almighty difficult future for certainly my children and grandchildren. And you're too young to have children, but
Sorry?
if you did,
I've got
your
grandchildren,
children,
man. I've got grandchildren. I'm 60 in a minute.
You don't look it.
You're too
Jeremy,
nice
honestly.
to me. You're too nice. And one final thing, very, 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 very quickly, if you don't mind as well. This came from Jack Elsom at The Sun earlier. I don't know, I mean, I'm not Shabana Mahmood's biggest fan, the Justice Secretary, but even she today, this sentencing council, who suggested last week, have you heard this, that a convict's ethnicity, faith or gender should be taken into account when, I know they've broken the law, but be careful, be soft on jail. She said, hold on a minute, the judges have hit back at her today and said, don't even try and get involved with us. We don't need, we're not, that's what we're doing. Again, I ask you, what country says, thanks for committing that crime, but because you're that coloured skin, or that's your religion, or that's your sexuality, we're going to be soft on you? That's a joke.
But the law and the application of the law has completely gone off the dial, and it's enunciated by that that example you gave of the couple who drove over and had a illegal immigrant strapped to the bottom of their vehicle. I mean, the law's gone mad. The application of the law's gone mad. It's made itself so expensive now to do anything with the law. And I mean, you know, the BBC it's cost them what it's cost them, but it's only because they're having to pay lawyers. And this has got to have a big shakedown. It really has. And good luck to the Justice Secretary, and credit where it's due. She's trying to shake down. And I'm glad Robert Jenrick, for example, is also supporting her on this.
Absolutely. Lord Marlon, we love you. If I ever get to number 10 Downing Street, senior aide, absolutely, chief of staff. We love having you on. Looking great for his age. All those grandchildren. Brilliant. You know, how good does he look? 0344 499 1000. Breaking news on Talk Drive. Unbelievable story. A senior aide to Wes Streeting, the Labour Health Secretary, and a Labour councillor has pleaded guilty to 2 counts of indecent exposure. This just from The Sun. Sam Gould intentionally exposed himself, intending that someone would see his genitals and be caused alarm or distress. How do you say that with a straight face? The Health Secretary tonight said that he was rightly shocked and horrified and called for Sam Gould to stand down immediately. Sam Gould will be sentenced next month. That's a senior aide to Wes Streeting and a Labour councillor pleading guilty to 2 counts of indecent exposure. And it says here, actually, he exposed his genitals intending that someone would see them and that would cause alarm or distress. Disgusting. Sam Gould, a senior aide to the Health Secretary, being called by Wes Streeting, who I think, again, a lot of people don't like it, gets most things right. I don't agree with a lot of his politics, but straight away out the block saying he's shocked and horrified and has called for him to stand down immediately, unless, of course, if he's a senior aide, Wes, I'd sack him straight away. Maybe that's the answer to the phone lines. We'll go to London. Kirsten, you're on Talk Drive. A very good evening to you. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Jeremy?
I'm all right. What can we do for you?
Well, 2 things. That crime by ethnicity is ridiculous. I come from a third world country, from Honduras. We've spoken before. So do I get a free pass to commit any... I'm a woman, I'm a minority. I might identify as something else, so maybe I'll just go on a rant and rob a bank or something.
You see, people might tune in, they might go, what's she talking about? This is simply because it was absolutely disgusting to repeat this story. Top judges have today hit back at claims they're imposing a 2-tier system of justice that favours ethnic and gender minorities. The Sentencing Council didn't like, and I agree with Lord Marlon, the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, deserves respect because she basically wrote to them and said, this new guidance is ludicrous. Last week, they issued rules, this Sentencing Council, telling judges to take into account a convict's ethnicity, faith or gender. And as you quite rightly says, so you could change gender, you could be a woman, you could want to be a man, you could commit a crime, and you're going to get a softer sentence because you're a minority group. What a load of old crap.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that couple who was fined, they should be grateful to 2-tier care. They could have been done for smuggling and kidnapping of those poor, kind gentlemen.
It's a migrant under the car.
Yeah, but the couple should be grateful that they didn't get anything else than a 1,500.
How can they be grateful when he's gone to a...
ironic.
Oh, sorry. Honduras irony. You see, I'm sorry. Should we do that again? Love having you on, Kirsten. Thank you very much indeed. 6:20. We're live across the UK. 0344. You see, all right, Ryan. Ryan's laughing at me. It's quite sad. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Reform would have no MPs without Nigel Farage, but they need to come to some sort of compromise as we need them to save our country. Graham with an E in Birmingham. There's lots of E's in Graham. That didn't sound right, did it? 0344 499 1000. Next, delighted as well, live from Israel, Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, next on Drive. Coming back in 3.
What are you hearing on the streets?
Well, what I'm hearing is that, the public support for Netanyahu is very, very low. It's fading away. At the same time, when you ask people, well, who would you prefer? The problem is that there's no obvious replacement. So whilst his ratings, if you like, are at an all-time low, nor is there an immediate solution for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:25. I'm trying, honestly, it's been 3 years. The essence of speed is lost upon me. Welcome back, by the way. Kev O'Sullivan is here from 7 o'clock. What a great job he did on Drive on Friday. Good man. He's here from 7. Petri Hoskins from 10. If you want to get your call on ahead of that, you know how to do it. Jodie's here, 0344 499 1000. Delighted now to cross live to Israel with our international editor for Talk, Isabel Oakeshott. Very good evening. How are you?
I am very well, thank you, and it's so interesting to be here in Tel Aviv as these attempts to try to move the situation forward continue. And actually, today we've had the cutting off of electricity supplies to Gaza, which sounds probably more drastic than it actually is. Understand that there's enough generators in Gaza for about 45 days worth of power supply, and mainly that electricity is needed, the extra electricity, to desalinate water. And again, that sounds very drastic, as if the Israelis are sort of trying to starve out and parch the enemy, and including civilians, but that isn't going to happen. It's more of a sort of a firm gesture, shall we say, at this point. So
they're trying to force Hamas. They're trying to force Hamas to release the remaining hostages and force them to the negotiating table, really, from a position of weakness, right? Would that be fair?
That's absolutely right. It's thought that there are at least 20 hostages still alive and still being kept in captivity, and very sadly, quite a number of murdered hostages whose loved ones naturally want their remains to be returned. And it's now been a couple of weeks since any hostages have been released, and, mounting frustration on the Israeli side that nothing seems to be progressing. And here in Tel Aviv, it's impossible to get away from that hostage story. It's everywhere. On every lamppost there are signs up, pictures of the victims. Every building, every car, there are yellow ribbons everywhere, and there's one simple message. It is: bring them home, and bring them home now.
In terms of being there in Tel Aviv, don't know if you've had time. We've heard a lot over the month, Isabel, about Netanyahu and him having his own agenda, and if it wasn't for this conflict, he wouldn't be in power. And he seems to have gone through swathes of being unpopular, very popular, and whatever. Are the Israeli people, who famously have to stick together for the discrimination that has been shown over the years, but are they behind their government? Do you get that feeling, or do they want an end to this war?
No, I think it's pretty loveless, actually. I think that the latest polling shows a significant and steady drop-off in support for the leadership. I think there's an acknowledgement that now is not the time to have elections, but no great sense of also who might emerge as much better than what they've got. And, I think we're all familiar with that in our own country. Sometimes you've got governments that you can't stand. I'm not talking about now, although I've got my reservations about our government. But it doesn't necessarily mean that people are coalescing around anyone else. So I think I really sense a mood of not exactly pessimism, but people just don't see how this is going to end now.
But I think that's if I could jump in, I think that's the really salient point in all of this. I understand more than you'll know about the desire to return the hostages. I understand, and I've been more supportive of the Jewish part. I mean, it does my head in that people can be called racist in this country for daring to talk about immigration, but Jewish people can be. I mean, there's a man, some illegal migrant got into this country today, and he's been filmed with an AK-47 saying, "I want all Jews slaughtered." It's beyond me. I think racism against Jewish people is as abhorrent as any other racism. But my point is this: let's say the hostages are given back and the Gaza electricity thing works, and Netanyahu's fated or not fated. What happens next, I think, is the point at which people, not just the rebuild and those plans, how are these two nations going to live in harmony and peace next door, not next door to each other? Where does that leadership come from, do you think, Isabel?
So, I mean, the difficulty is that Hamas is far from wiped out. You know, it's not even that disabled. It's definitely, it's definitely taken a good kicking. But I think there's frustration among ordinary Israelis. I've certainly talked to quite a lot of people now. And there's a feeling that we haven't actually achieved anywhere near as much as we'd like to have nearly 18 months into this. We've certainly flattened, 80% of Gaza. But we haven't flattened Hamas. And, what people talk about as a solution in which there's a sort of new technocratic government in Gaza, what does that mean in Palestine? What it means is not a government run by Hamas, but where do these operatives go? They're not all in that part of the world anyway.
But it's not just operatives, it's about ideology, isn't it? You can wipe out or attempt to wipe out. We've heard all about the tunnels. We've heard about how if you take out their military leaders, but that doesn't answer the fact that the ideology will retain itself. Let's not forget that Hamas has been part of Gaza for so long. Look, I mean, I've had stand-up arguments with friends of mine. I hate what I see, but to me, and I'm probably very, very old-fashioned, Israel today cutting off electricity to Gaza to force Hamas to return hostages. I struggled when this was first talked about to imagine that one should ever even negotiate with bloody terrorists in the first place. But what are you supposed to do when those terrorists hide themselves in civilian populations? Because the only way that you're going to rid yourself or attempt to rid yourself of those people is by carrying out what Israel has carried out. But it's not been nice, and it doesn't seem, as you quite rightly say, to have an end goal.
I know. Well, I sort of worry that this could become a bit like Afghanistan. You put all these efforts and resources and blood and treasure and human lives year after year after year, and at the end of it all, you kind of, all those countries that have contributed get fed up of it and say, actually, I'm not sure how much more we can do here. And things just return to how they were before, and everybody wonders whether it was worth it. And I know that sounds very fatalistic, and hopefully there will be a better outcome than that, rather than years and years of warfare. But I just sense people here in Israel are beginning to get disillusioned. They're losing confidence in the leadership. And
war fatigue is a very genuine emotion, and in fact it's quite interesting if you look at the whole Ukraine situation. And I am one of the most vocal supporters of how we have to support Ukraine, and I don't, for the life of me, there's obviously a reason, and I'll obviously get it right. I don't really understand the Trump approach at all. I've said that. I know he wants peace, but if you look at war is such a horrendous thing, but to me there has to be a reason for it, and I don't know where this all ends, and that is, I think, the next thing that people need to think about.
Jeremy, nobody does. No. That's the thing. We could talk to any number of experts. None of them know how this ends. If someone had a great solution, then it would have happened by now. I mean, I remember last time I was in Israel was many, many, many years ago. Was with Tony Blair. Remember, Tony Blair was supposed to be bringing peace to the Middle East? Didn't work out too well, did it?
Sorry, I can hear. I've got this really weird thing in the studio today. I can hear every conversation through the glass. That's how good the foolproof thing. But I can also hear you from Israel, so that's a good thing. In terms of you're there, you're working for talk. You're trying to garner what's going to be the next thing. But you make the point. Nobody really knows, and that's the tragedy, isn't it? Because I think the point I was trying to make before was Ukraine. war fatigue. That happens. In the end, people don't go, oh, I don't care about those hostages. I don't care about the people being killed in Gaza. It's there, but it goes to the middle and then the back of your brain. As you quite rightly say, you think Afghanistan, you think Vietnam. We've become conditioned to the fact that this horror is continuing and there doesn't seem to be an answer and a way out. And that's what I guess, hopefully, the world should rally against and try and find a solution. That would be my two pennyworth, to be fair.
Yeah, and I suppose this is why, you know, the Trump administration is doing what would previously have been unthinkable, which is, you know, actually having some direct discussions with Hamas representatives. You know, traditionally, America has taken the view that, as we do generally, that you can't negotiate with terrorists. And I mean, in any case, how can you negotiate with a terror organization whose actual mission is the permanent destruction of Israel? I mean,
and who are prepared to use their own people as targets. Listen, 25 to 7, I know you're a busy lady, and we're also very honest with each other, and if you don't want to talk to me about the next thing, it's absolutely fine. We talked about this earlier. Obviously, major eruptions inside your party, my party, Reform, since I left doing this show on Wednesday and had a couple of days off. Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe, there seems to be a media silence now. Can you give us anything, a view? If not, if you don't feel comfortable, quite understand what you're thinking.
Well, what I would say is the big news tonight is that there's going to be a by-election in Runcorn because that Mike Ainsbury, the Labour MP that people will remember, duffed up one of his constituents. He's going to, as you do.
Yeah.
I think at least Reform isn't doing that to each other.
What do you mean you didn't vote for me? Brilliant.
So this is a really important challenge. You know, this is a seat where Labour has a pretty big majority. This Mike Amesbury, I was just checking the figures. Allow me just to check my number here. He has a majority of just under 15,000. So that, in the normal scheme of things, is pretty healthy. Reform came second in that seat with around 7,000 and so votes, and is the bookmaker's favourite, or at least was before all these shenanigans. So look, I think Reform has to do very well in this by-election. In other words, ideally win. By-elections can be incredibly unpredictable. And, you know, if the party doesn't win, I don't mean to sort of over-egg it and say that's a very disastrous thing, but I think the party now needs to focus on that challenge.
Are you saying that Runcorn and Frodsham, or whatever the seat is, this is an opportunity for the party to put the squabble aside and come out and fight as well? And it'll be very interesting to see whether that happens. And it'll also be, because I'm straight with you, we're straight with each other, very interesting response today. Half of people are going, there would be no party without Nigel Farage, don't you dare. And others are saying, the timing didn't look great, it doesn't speak volumes, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to play out. What I said, and I'd love your take on this, was that actually the deafening silence from the Tory leadership, their first open goal for about 10 months, their chance to lead the narrative, nothing. Complete silence all day, all weekend.
Well, I don't think they've felt the need to wade into this one. You know, it's made plenty of unfortunate headlines without the Tories having to get involved, as it were. But I think, you know, Reform voters have definitely been, or would-be Reform voters have definitely been disappointed by this. It's not ideal, is it? You know, let's not sugarcoat it here. But ultimately, they're not voting on personalities, really. They're not backing the party because of a few personalities.
But are they? Well, actually, you see, now, again, tell me, do people vote for Reform, or have they, and do they vote for Nigel Farage? That's a really straight question.
Well, I mean, they certainly voted. I mean, this is a question for every political party.
Yeah.
The question is, what you're really asking is, how important is a leader?
Yeah.
And you know, Reform has achieved its highest ever poll ratings with Nigel Farage. You know, you just can't argue with that. You know, he is absolutely exceptional, and he's going to go on being exceptional And I think the party will, in the next few days, recover itself, move on from this, and get back to doing what they do best, which is talking about immigration, which our listeners care so much about.
In which case, I know you had a chance to read the news, but I'd love your response to my favourite story of the day, and you can do this blind because you're that bleeding good. Do you know how rubbish our country is, Isabel? A couple who discovered a migrant had clung to the back of their vehicle. Apparently, I've been told off, it wasn't underneath, it was on the back in a sort of boat thing or something. They had a cradle on the back carrying 2 bikes. They had an awning over it. Poor old Adrian and Joanne Fenton come back from France where some unsuspecting person looked in and out popped a migrant. But because this is the United Kingdom, Isabel Oakeshott, he got taken to a 4-star hotel and given steak and chips, a bottle of red wine and a mobile phone. And old Adrian and old, whatever her name is, Joanne, they got fined 1,500 quid. I mean, that's how mad this country is now.
That is absolutely outrageous. Is that Keir Starmer's idea of smashing the vile people smuggling gangs, is it?
Honestly.
That's his only win, is it? You know, just smashing those poor people who are completely
innocent
blindsided by this. Absolutely unbelievable. But you know what? They don't have any other success stories to tell, the government, on their smashing the vile people smuggling gangs. So they're going for people that didn't even know they were people smuggling.
Do you know what? That is the best line of the whole show, and I love you for it. Poor old Adrian and Joanne Fenton. That's Starmer's first smash the gangs. 2 innocent people with a motorhome who happened to have a migrant somewhere under a bit of canvas. Isabel in Israel, thank you so much. Isabel Oakeshott talks international editor over there in Israel as she watches the impact of Israel, what's going to happen, the release of those last hostages, Israel demanding it, Hamas not moving. So today Israel has cut off the electricity to Gaza. She's going to watch what happens over the next 2 days, and you'll hear her reports exclusively live, only here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Somebody rang me up earlier and said, why do you always compliment Mike Graham's breakfast show? Because it's the best one anywhere. He's here from 6 with Morning Glory. We're here until 7, and at 7 o'clock it's Kev O'Sullivan.
Oh, which one was he?
Oh, my God, that woman's back again. This is the woman from last week. I was on the phone. I said, Kev's on at 7, and she said...
Oh, which one was he?
He's a legend. He did Drive on Friday, and he's here from 7 o'clock. Petri Hoskins is here from 10. If you want to slip your call in, that didn't sound right. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Jez says Chris Lord Marland, who we had on at 6, is living in a bloody fantasy land. He and his party started the breakup of this damn country. 14 years and pound did nothing but allowed millions of migrants in. Interesting. Talk, will someone please tell Jessa, it's not Jessa, it's Jessa, that the immigrant was not under the couple's vehicle. They were in a motorhome and had a cradle on the back carrying 2 bikes under a weather protection cover. The immigrant had got inside the cover so could not be found until someone did a search. I'm so sorry to have been so crap and got it wrong, but you should never get in the way of a good story. But it is true. Poor Adrian and Joanne Fenton, if you didn't know this story, came back from France in motorhome. Nobody suspected anything, and in typical British style, there was a migrant. Rather than... Anyway, what we did was we looked after the migrant, put him in the hotel, got him a dentist, got him a doctor's appointment, steak and chips, bottle of red wine, mobile phone. And poor old Joanne and Adrian Fenton, they were fined 1,500 quid. And I think Isabel Oakeshott was spot on. That is the only time that Keir Starmer has attempted to smash a gang. Only it's just 2 innocent people off on a trip to Euro Disney. We say a very good evening at 6:45 to a legend, former NATO and Royal Naval Commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Christoph, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Can you believe that story that couple got fined for that illegal migrant? The world's gone bloody nuts, Chris.
Yeah, I'm afraid to say the justice system at the moment's got some very old priorities. I have to say that. Yeah.
Just very quickly, as an ex-Royal Navy commander, that breaking news from earlier, US military tanker hit by a cargo ship off the North Yorkshire coast earlier today. We had the local MP, Graham Stewart, on saying there were 36 crew in total, just 1 injured, people off. But jet fuel, concerns obviously from an environmental point of view. But have you got the latest on what's happened there at all?
No, I probably don't know any more than you do, Jeremy, but the fact of life is jet fuel is better than crude oil.
Right.
It'll tend to disperse. The more that burns off, the better, frankly. And it'll disperse much more quickly within the sea with the stream and the wind and all that sort of thing. So that's the only fortunate thing that comes out of this, to tell you the truth. I
do love how cool you are. I mean, you must have been so cool when you were in charge of your ship, because nothing winds you up at all, does it? Did you ever crash your ship?
No.
You never crashed it, taking it into port or anything? You never scraped the side or anything?
No, you get court-martialed for that. The only time I came close is I came alongside in Aqaba in Jordan, and we had an earthquake as we came alongside, and the jetty was moving towards me.
Honestly, you had an earthquake whilst you were trying to get you. I don't know what Ryan's doing. He's on his knees in the studio next door. Right. So, now listen, the reason that we got you on, apart from we love having you on, is yet another example of how barking mad this country is. This story is again, if you're just tuning in, Jesus, RAAF bosses have launched a desperate search for pilots after a secret bid to discriminate against white male applicants spectacularly backfired. Candidates previously overlooked are now being urged to reapply for training as the Air Force frantically tries to fill cockpits with combat-ready flyers. The plea follows a controversial drive by top brass to prioritise the recruitment of women and ethnic minorities, which understandably was found unlawful. This is like the 2-tier justice system. We had the Sentencing Committee saying last week to even the Labour Justice said, oh, no, if you're an ethnic minority or a different sex or a different religion, you should be getting a softer thing. Now you can't be in the RAF unless you're a woman or somebody from a minority background. But that's backfired spectacularly. The world's gone nuts, mate.
It's absolutely disgraceful. It's happening in almost every one of our institutions. Here it's happening at the BBC. And the fact of life is you need to be able to get as many good fighter and other pilots as you can. It doesn't matter where they come from. If they happen to be women or ethnic minorities, that's great too. But one thing I can tell you is fighter pilots are born, they're not made. And so if you're turning away people who have the natural aptitude and the killer instinct to be fighter pilots, then it's an absolute disgrace, and you're doing a disservice to this country and our armed forces. You know, I'm in the Navy. I like to think the Fleet Air Arm isn't like that. But we're short of pilots, we're short of aircrew. Why? Because of these ridiculous diversity targets that are putting people off. And if you say to white people, look, we don't really value you that much, so go and find another job, they're going to do it. And at a time when the airlines are crying out for good pilots, you're not going to recruit them for the military. I'm afraid it's the effect of a long peace. You know, we haven't felt the need to have these people in the sky for a long time now. If you go to Ukraine right now, you know, their fighter pilots and other pilots are gods and goddesses.
In terms of your experience in the military, I didn't get to talk to you last week. I mean, they had that whole thing where Starmer stood up and, I'm going to increase defence spending, and then there was an argument whether that was going to be used or how it was going to be used. You, I know, have been very vocal over the years about how, our military, be it the Army, be it the Air Force, be it the Navy, it has been decimated, and by successive governments. And you made a point there I wanted to pick up upon, because you said it's almost a result of there having been peace. Do you believe the leaders of our countries in decimating our armed forces have been naive to what was going to happen, or was it just a natural reaction to how things were? Because certainly that's changed now, right?
When I was at school, I spoke to Dennis Healey, who was the Defence Minister at the time.
How big were his eyebrows?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, he's a big personality too.
Yeah.
But here's a guy who remembers World War II. And he gave a speech. He was a Labour, remember, he was Labour politician, and he gave a speech at my school explaining why it was important we had people like us joining the armed forces. I wouldn't say I joined because of that speech. I joined for lots of other reasons. But the idea of duty, sacrifice, honour came before diversity. At the end of the day, we want people who are going to actually join because they love their country and they love the values that we're attached to. We're not going to win a war against Russia or China or any other person that is going to come against us if we start putting the wrong criteria in the sky.
Why do you think, just very quickly and let you go, I know we always sit and we talk about, the world's gone woke. How can anybody with a brain cell have thought that militarily that's a good idea? Surely to defend your nation, as you quite rightly say, you want the best.
Yep. And it's got to reflect the best in society. It's because there's this real canard that the armed forces got to reflect society. They don't. We don't want drug dealers and, hustlers and people like that. We want people, who, as I said, are proud of their country and its values. It should reflect the best in society. And when I go down and I see recruits who've been in the Navy, say, just a month, and I see the pride on their parents' faces of the people they've become, then you know that we are recruiting and training the best in society. We do not want to reflect society. We want people who can take on our enemies and prevail.
Always so good to have you on. And I loved, apparently, whilst I was speaking to Isabel, you were shouting out about the interview. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, thank you so much indeed. Former NATO and Royal Navy Commander on Talk Drive, 10 to 7. We'll get a couple of calls in if you want to be one of those people. 0344 Fulham 91000. Talk Drive till 7, then it's Kev O'Sullivan.
We know that this man is a gun-toting, jihad-loving, Jew-hating lunatic that is now wandering the streets. How many of them are coming in here? We have no idea. What we do know is that the consistent pattern of everybody that shows up on these boats is that they are fighting age men from war-torn regions who have a much higher rate of committing crime in the very relatively short period of time they're in this country than do any other category of migrants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7 minutes to 7 o'clock. Yeah, honestly, if you could just be part of what goes on in this studio. So Ryan, bless him, top producer, he's going to the supermarket to decide what to have for dinner with his girlfriend, wife, Mrs. Amy's just smiling. Jodie is going home to bed because she's shattered from a weekend of partying. She's not having any dinner. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to London. Georgina, welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. Can I just say, Jez, that you should be in Parliament talking on our behalf. You are amazing. Right,
It has been muted, but can you imagine me, the right honourable gentleman's a top... Yeah, I'd be in trouble within 5 minutes, but yeah, maybe one day.
Right, my thoughts on the Rupert Gates saga is that there's too much testosterone for these two guys to be in Reform UK, for my liking. There can only be one leader. I think Nigel Farage has been the figurehead and has done really well so far. He's got both the correct degree of political expertise and a bit of showmanship to take Reform to number 10, in my opinion. Rupert Lowe has obviously taken a shot at the title. This has backfired, and now it's handbags at dawn.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think I mean, I could be wrong. And there are people saying that they should have been more vocal. They've decided to go into themselves and keep quiet. It sort of seems to have started when Musk gave it, there needs to be a new leader, and Nigel in Rupert Lowe's great. But I think that in a way their success could also sort of be a precursor to problems, because what you have in Parliament is this huge swathe, certainly in the Labour Party, where they've never had jobs in their life. They're all about 11 years of age. They've gone to college and studied politics and worked in the local council and ate lots of vegan food, and now they're suddenly MPs. Whereas these people in Reform are successful businessmen and women who have opinions as a result of that. And you're right, Farage has been the absolute epicentre of it, the absolute epicentre. And I maintain that without Nigel Farage, Reform wouldn't be where it is. But if you're going to bring successful people in, their egos are going to become part of it, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I take all that in, and you're absolutely spot on, Jez. But we didn't vote and pay for our memberships to watch them waste their time squabbling when they have more important matters to attend to. Rupert Lowe, I don't think he will be able to return to Reform. I don't think Rupert's pride would allow him to do that anyway. We don't know what's gone on, the ins and outs of everything that's gone on. But I'm a giant believer in there's no smoke without fire. Yep. They need some strong women in this party to keep them in check. And I think that they should come on, Talk TV, and have a live debate so we've got transparency on what actually has gone on.
Do you know what? I completely agree. And let me just say this to you. They have been asked for the last 48 hours, but it seems that at the moment they want to go into themselves. But thank you. Georgina in London, we love you. Chris is in Epsom. I'm sad to tell you, you've literally got 1 minute. Go.
Right, get them in one room, all of them, smack their heads together. But the UK needs them. We don't need them arguing over policy or over egos. And we certainly don't need the hand grenade that Rupert threw on Saturday with the Mail, and we don't need the response of, which I believe they only did for one reason, is reporting it to the police, because now they can say they can't talk about it because it's subject to investigation. They are behaving like children, and that's not what we need. 4 million people voted for them. They need to sort themselves out.
Maybe it's the reality of a party growing. I don't know. I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you what, I'm going to slip one more in Scottish Islands. New caller. Logan, you've got 1 minute. Go.
Hi there, Jez. The migrant situation is making the country a laughing stock with things like what happened with the Fentons and Abu Wadi. He should be a wake-up call. If he isn't, I don't know what is. But surely Yvette Cooper could come up with a solution.
But this is you speak such sense. I spent the Thursday and Friday in Scotland. If somebody who is calling for the slaughter of all Jews, who has been filmed on Facebook with an AK-47 rifle, is allowed to come into this country and survive, then that says absolutely zilch about this country. This country needs sorting out. That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it says come one, come all.
Absolutely. Logan, can I just say, I spent Thursday and Friday in Scotland. Fantastic country, great people, loved it. Thank you for coming on. Here's a man who did, on drive time, a job that made the rest of us look complete crap.
Well, that's not
sorry,
true.
That was Harry Cole for a minute. Kevin, I'm joking. How are you, sir?
Yeah, the right time, right place kind of thing.
Didn't it?
Friday, extraordinary stuff.
We've only got a minute and a half. It's interesting. People, they're all going either sort yourselves up, bang your heads together, reform needs you, or this was always going to happen when you've got big egos. Interesting,
well,
right?
Let me tell you this. I'm going to make this clear to my audience, your audience, our audience. You cannot have Reform UK with Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe has gone. He will not be coming back. So if you
Let me
wanna,
ask you a question.
If you want to support reform,
can you have a party with Nigel Farage and anybody else with a big ego? And I'm a friend of Nigel's. I'm asking you the question.
I think it's doable. But Rupert Lowe didn't have the knack, put it that way.